Hello, welcome back to the Dynasty Grind. My name is Peter Howard at PA Howdy on Twitter, and if that still exists, I don't know anymore. Threads anywhere else that you need now. YouTube, if I'm still on there, I don't know. Yeah, welcome in. We talk about Dynasty and fantasy football in general every Wednesday from 9:30 till we get bored or go home or run out of questions, and we'd be happy to answer or talk about anything that you want to drop in the comment box, whatever platform you happen to be watching us on. I think we're live on both Twitch and YouTube. And yeah, welcome back. Let's talk some rookies, or preferably almost anything else. Hey Zach, how you doing?
Not bad, Peter. We're here. It's rookie season. We're pre-combine. So this is like the combine eve. You hang up your athletic supporters and your socks by the chimney with care and hope that you run a 4.35. You know, it's one of those things.
Yeah. I tell you what, I was listening to. I'm way behind on podcasts because I don't do nothing, and I was listening to the Superflex Super Show with special guest star Zach Reed. So that was fun.
I've heard of him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'd listen to
how much you hate talking about rookies. It was a great rookie episode. We hate this subject.
They were like, we're way too early, but let's go. So
as always, I disagree with everything John said, and I agree with most things you said. So it was pretty awesome. Yeah,
I'm telling you, it's getting very eerie for me to talk rookies now, because when we first started doing this, Peter, we were almost diametrically opposed. And I know I tweeted this out.
Not my fault. You were wrong.
I tweeted this out a couple of weeks ago, but it's kind of like the couple that's been together so long they start to look like each other. Like we've been doing this so long that our rookie ranks, our rookie evaluations start to look.
I mean, theoretically, generally, that should happen for everyone that's been in the space line. If you're trying to progress and get better,
yes,
technically, shouldn't we all be getting closer together as we get better? If you know what I mean, closer to a better result.
So sometimes it feels like the ever expanding universe, you know.
I like your idea better, but some new. The one and only commenter early. Good evening, fellas. Regarding league mate relations, how do you handle one guy who lambasts your trade offers in the group chat while sending lopsided trade offers themselves? Interesting question. I mean, you could. It's banter in the league chat. I would treat it like every other banter in the league chat, but also continue to just reject his terrible offers while sending your own, I guess.
So I think that, Peter, is really the answer is, if it is a league chat and they are active in the league chat and giving opinions about trades in the league chat, see if you can manipulate that to be a conversation about values, whether it's player values, whether it's trade values, and try to glean some information about how they're thinking about players, because you may be so different in your evaluations that there may actually be some way to gain an advantage there. I mean, if it's just somebody that wants to win every trade and, you know, there's not much you can do about that. Like I've played in leagues with people that are that way. And when that happens, I just message J Mike or Peter or Russ and say, look, he's at it again. And you know, you just kind of shrug and go from there. But as far as like, I'm not going to get bent out of shape by somebody like calling me out in a league chat, because I trust my values and I try to send good offers. It's a little bit of good faith, and you kind of have to be working with the other people in your league. So again, like, try to start that conversation, whether it's in the main chat, or maybe you can start a value conversation with them outside of a main chat. Maybe you can get in a DM, or you can use the comments in your trade negotiations to try to figure out either common ground or why you're so far apart. That's what I would do. Is I would be trying to look for information wherever I can get it on my league mates. So try to get them talking.
Yes. On that note, in terms of getting bent out of shape on something, it's easy to do, but just walk away. You're trying to remind yourself that there's literally nothing on the internet worth getting bent out of shape for. Almost nothing in life worth getting bent out of shape for, as much as you can handle that. And definitely not fantasy football. Like if they're going to take it that importantly, just take a breath when you have to, but try to remember it doesn't matter. And try and beat them effectively, which is always a handy comeback. Toronto Dave, so many party hat guys. Appreciate it, Dave. You too, Dave. Rookie season, talk to me. I mean, yeah, it's here. I'm in a hibernation until the combine's done and dusted, and the talk of the combine fades away because the draft is here. Because I hate that. That's
Peter, I had a question for you.
We're trying. We're out here.
I have a question for you. Roman Wilson. Have you looked at Roman Wilson? Have you done any? Yeah. So ironically, because he was behind Ronnie Bell for a year at Michigan, he is a player that some of the NFL draft nicks are pushing up, thinking that he's going to be a high draft pick. And I was wondering what your numbers said about him.
Oh, God, he's going to be a post-draft climber. I hate that. Okay, yeah, I can tell you what I got. High ADOT, high slot player. It's very common for this class in general. I think there's going to be draft capital spent for that reason, but that's regardless. Least drafted and lowest hit group at the position. High ADOT and high slot player. Oh, sorry. The other thing I said was wrong. Though, to be fair, we've seen it grow somewhat in the last few years. It's a Darnell Mooney and Zay Flowers group that we talked about with some other players. And that's just some context for where he was playing in college and the fact that role doesn't really exist in the NFL, so something's got to give. Also worth noting is a point of a slot and ADOT note is to say one group isn't good or bad. It's just to provide context for their cohorts to find players with similar roles, and therefore presumably better historical production to compare them to. Having said that, Roman Williams, a 4-year prospect who played far behind AJ Herron and then Ronnie Bell before finding his shot as the wide receiver 1. Sorry, I suck at this. Probably isn't the best follow-up. His QB ratings final year is above average, which is the best thing I can find to say about him, as was his second-year QB rating when he was wide receiver 2, and yards per route run are generally decent, so I can imagine there are some good highlight reels out there, but he is never more than the marginal part of the offense relative to the size of the offense that he was playing in. Spelling mistake, obviously. And his only borderline age-adjusted positive season was his senior season at age 22 with an 18% target share. Yeah, I don't like it. He's ranked he's in my 7th tier. If that gives you some idea.
And that's I think going to be my estimation or similar to my estimation. But I didn't know if you were seeing something differently than I was.
My pre-draft model liked him, and everyone tries to refer to my models as if I'm trying to solve it with a model like everyone else in fantasy Twitter that is a nerd. And it's not. I see my model a very particular way. It's to highlight certain things, and I know what it does, and then to go look for common patterns of production that I'm familiar with having different hit rates. Like it's not meant to be essentially a rankings engine. But yeah, some of his numbers, his peak numbers, can give you a high model score, as mine does. But I think any reasonable look at his production would say, yeah, I mean, he could certainly be a role player, but not the exact role he was playing in college, which means he's going to need some versatility. He's going to need to advance his game in the NFL level. and he wasn't a significant part of the offense in college, which leads me to believe he is less likely to develop that significant role in an NFL offense, which is what we need for fantasy points to be, usable, stable, finish in the top 24, that kind of a thing. As a too long didn't read version. That's ultimately what I'm seeing.
Yeah. So I mean, you and I are kind of on the same page. I think he is. I mean, you look at his hands wise, he's a hands catcher, is very quiet at the catch point, good at working underneath man coverage, and that is a very like a distinction you need to make. He's good at working second level of zone, so he does a good job getting further downfield against zone coverage, but man coverage, I think he is a lot more adept working underneath. It's funny, he's sudden in spurts, and I think people get excited about his quickness, but it's not consistent in and out of breaks at the stem of his route. He also will flatten his routes and take away some of the suddenness that he has. And so, those two things work against him. I think he takes a long time to develop his routes. And so even when he's getting open downfield, the ball has already come out to another receiver who got open before he did. And part of that is he's not fast. He's not quick. He's not fast. I don't see him as being able to get over the top and separate that way. And so he's limited to being underneath, but he's not a high volume underneath player. And so it's a tricky profile, but I think he's going to be Michigan drafted because Michigan just won the national championship and everyone is enamored with the Harbaugh team. It's an NFL pro style offense. And but they also, and they're going to make excuses because they ran 60% of the time and this and that. But that's why I wanted to make sure that what I was seeing kind of jived with your metric analysis, with your numbers, because sometimes I'll watch a guy and he's not doing very much, but then you'll tell me, oh no, he was 35% of his team's, offense. And I'm like, oh, so.
No, I get it. No, he's relatively, he's an important role player for the team, as it looks like. And my pre-draft model includes some expectation of draft capital, like you said, with Michigan. And I think that helps him out too. And that's not nothing. That's not just to throw it away. The reason I do that, it's the best way I can find to, one, get a little bit of that draft signal in before the draft. But also, I think I cannot find a way of effectively adjusting production based on where a player plays. It's something you do naturally when you watch the tape because you understand where they're playing and you see the competition they're against.
Right.
I was thinking about this with something you were talking about on the Superflex show about JJ McCarthy and the way he runs and the fact that the linebackers aren't NFL linebackers, or a small percentage of them are. Like, it's a really good point, and I think it's underrated. It's important that 13% of random number of the linebackers players facing at a good conference are possibly NFL level, and only a few of them are going to hit as well. And then when you elevate, everyone's at the NFL level. They're all at least that 13% they were facing in college. And you want that kind of adjustment, but there isn't an effective adjustment to make while playing Michigan versus playing at Cursor Conference, But some level of this production came from this team that is often highly drafted. It's roping in some subjectivity from the NFL for sure. But I think it's the only way I can seem to find it. But that's one of the things I know that exists in my model intentionally. So when I look at Rome Wilson getting a pretty decent 14 pre-draft score and then see that he's a smaller part of the offense who isn't particularly impressive across any of his numbers. And I know and I know how much of that model score is related to his pre-draft. He's at 12 as a raw production score, which kind of removes that draft capital element, which is still pretty solid. But he's a solid high high slot player, which means it's not the same. It's not the same kind of thing. But I appreciate that we mesh once again. I hate it, but it's nice. Genji, we're out here every Wednesday. We're trying our best.
I mean, Genji, I may have missed our post Valentine's Day, and we didn't grind on
We did
Valentine's
miss
Day,
1
so,
week.
yeah. Peter had a
Appreciate
date.
you guys doing this. No
I
problem,
was
Cypher.
here.
Thanks for coming back and chatting with us because we're very boring middle-aged men. So no, but we do enjoy talking with you all about this stuff. So thanks for giving us the opportunity to do that. What's the hit rate for running? Well, I am a very boring middle-aged man. Zach is obviously something very different. What's the hit rate for running backs drafted from picks 49 to 80? You gotta make me open it up. All right.
You don't just have that?
I actually, no, I don't have it memorized off the top of my head. I do have a whole table that lists it by groups of picks rather than rounds, and also every individual pick, just because I get this kind of question every now and again. But it does mean opening up my database. I don't exactly know. Let's see, 49 to 80. That's like round 2 to 3. It's not terrible at running back, relatively.
Yeah.
It also depends a little bit on how you define what a hit is. I tend to go for how many seasons they finished at a certain production level. And I can modify that a little bit sometimes too. But with running backs, you're really just looking for top 12 seasons. But I often go to, top 24, just that they're somewhat startable, even though that's not particularly valuable at running back. Let me see. Do I have the buckets anywhere? Thy buckets. Running back number of picks, hits in the top 12. Less than 48. Between 32 and 40. Okay, I can modify this to get you your answer. So it's greater than pick 80. Well, let's say 81. And less than or equal to. Okay, yeah, I got you. Sorry, I have to modify a bucket, and it'll take a second to update because I have to set Excel on this setting where it doesn't recalculate things when I type it because the sheet would crash if I keep doing that. So I have to kind of resave. Okay, what happened here?
Film greater than numbers. That's what I'm hearing. Yeah. I don't have an answer.
Have any answers?
No, I don't. How will I know what the hit rate is? I can tell you what running backs I like in that range, but I can't tell you like the hit rate on them. And the interesting part about running backs to me is, so you've got your top end where you've got Bijan and Brees Hall and McCaffrey, but then you've got this group of probably 15 or so players that are all similar, and then another group of about 20 players after that are all similar. And so it's not even necessarily like which players, it's like where you can get them and what you can get out of them. So like running back is kind of an interchangeable piece for me. But
okay, well, in my college database, I have apparently 25 running backs drafted between picks 48 and 80, which is your bucket, I think you're asking about. And since 2008, 32% of them had a top 12 season, apparently. So at least one. Seems high. Yeah, greater than equal one top 12 season. In the top 24.
But that's kind of been the range of outside of like the elite backs. There haven't been that many first round running backs over the past, I don't know, 6 or 7 years. I mean, there have been a handful, and there have been years where there have been multiple. I mean, you had the Sony Michel, Rashad Penny year with Saquon going early. And you had obviously the 2017 class, but like post 2018, it's been pretty sparse.
Okay, this is messed up. No, that's not right. Keep talking, and I'm gonna figure this out. I don't need the second round criteria, and I need NFL database. Might have been easy.
This class, Genji, though, I don't think you're going to end up with many backs, even in that area. Like maybe the top backs will go in that area, but there are only like 4 or 5 running backs that I'm really interested in with a bullet. And then there are a few others who do some things well, but not necessarily everything well. And so this is a class with some warts. So for me, you've got Corm and Benson and Ray Davis and Braylon Allen and Jonathan Brooks up kind of in the top portion of things. And then you've got players like Bucky Irving, who is a real good pass catcher, but not a very good inside runner. He's more of a space back. So I kind of envision him as being a pass catcher, potentially with a little bit of juice if somebody got hurt, but you're not like incredibly excited about Bucky Irving. You got Marshawn Lloyd, who I think is maybe the best runner in the class, but is lacking in some other areas. You've got Cody Schrader, who I don't think gets the draft capital, but I really like a lot of the things that he does. He's a little bit smaller, but he kind of runs backwards. What I mean by that is you look at him and you assume that he's an outside of the tackles runner and a pass catcher, and he is a pass catcher, but he also does his best work inside of the tackles. You get someone like Will Shipley, who is really dynamic and can break a 60, 70 yard run at any time, but is also not consistent. And so it's just this is not a great class for running backs. There will be running backs that hit. There will be top 24 running backs in this class, but a lot of it is going to be situation dependent. A lot of it, like Audric Estime, who I have as my running back 11 in this class, is a really decent between the tackles runner. He's like a little more zippy Jordan Howard, not a great pass catcher. I don't think he's as bursty as people think he is, but he does have good long speed. So like once he gets up to speed, he's kind of a downhill guy. He's a player that if somebody got injured in front of him, he could come in and run the ball and be Gus Edwards. And you'd be really happy with that, but it's not necessarily a group that you're gonna end up with running backs in that 49 to 80 range.
Yeah, it looks like it's about right, around 31 to 32%. There were just more players drafted in that range than I thought. It's around 44. So yeah, around 31 to 32% have at least one top 12 season. I'm still looking. I'm just wondering who the hits were, just to give you an idea of that. Yeah, 20 players. Also, I think since 2001, that's too much. Let's go since 2008. Okay, I got 14 players since 2008 with at least one top 12 season drafted in that range. That's James Cook, Antonio Gibson, David Montgomery, most recently, Alvin Kamara, Joe Mixon. Before that, Duke Johnson technically has one top 12 season, apparently, although we try and forget that. Carlos Hyde, Jeremy Hill, Eddie Lacy, Le'Veon Bell was drafted? Yeah, second round.
Yeah.
Wow, exactly pick 48. DeMarco Murray, LaShawn McCoy, Jamal Charles. Yeah, it's a heavy hit area, let's face it. But second and third round for running backs, and Ray Rice before that.
Yeah, and it's a lot of pass catchers too. Like it's a lot of guys who have a profile that this class doesn't have. Like I think the guys who profile that way in this class are like Jonathan Brooks, Blake Corum, Trey Benson, and that's pretty much where you're at. I think. I mean, it's there aren't very many guys who profile as potential 3-down backs. I mean, Braylon Allen can catch a ball a little bit. You know, he's not a complete stiff, but he's also not going to haul off and catch you 30, 40, 50 balls, which is what you need to be a hit in that range that we're talking. So
sorry, I'm just looking at stuff now. Yeah, it's interesting you say that there is a distinct lack of significant pass catchers at running back in this year's class, because that's normally what I go looking for. Like, where are the pass catchers that I get to say everyone doesn't recognize are good, even though they probably do? And there's a lack of let's see. Well, Kyron Williams comes to mind because he recently broke out. Someone that really carries his production through the receiving game at a significant rate. Alvin Kamara on the high end, obviously. I'm reopening my sheet because I really can't remember. There are a few names that stuck out to me while I was going back over my running back ranks for this week's podcast. I was like, that's pretty good target share for a running back, especially relative to this class. And I was struck through it going back through.
Estime was one that you mentioned, Peter, that had a pretty good target share relative to his team. Because I remember you commenting on him because he played at Notre Dame in the Kyron Williams thing.
No, what I was noting about him is that he was almost as productive as Kyron Williams, but he was doing it more as a runner than Kyron Williams was.
Yeah,
like his career average target share is like 3.6, whereas again, to your Kyron Williams point, I can't even remember what his was, but it was significant.
He was a pass catcher. Yeah.
To me, was like 10% for his career average, and Estime is 3.6. Yet both carry around 2 yards per team pass attempt, which I know is a number that sounds fancy, but it's really not. It's a significant share of the team's offense, but one's doing it as a significant pass catcher, and so therefore the other one's making up for it somehow, and that's as a runner, obviously, is the assumption, and also the truth. But sorry, Karen, what were you going to say?
No, I was going to say the only player that has that Kyron Williams, or the player that has the most like a Kyron Williams profile to me in this class, and it's not a comp because they're not quite similar. Kyron Williams is a much better pass catcher, but Blake Corm is the one who feels the most Kyron Williams to me in this class. Yeah. Because he can carry the ball. He's got a little bit of burst. He's also good enough in the receiving game. He had two seasons where he had over 20 receptions. So he's already put that on film. Real good vision inside, can get outside as well, can win in short yardage situations with that decision making. He's not going to push a pile because he's only 5'8", 200, but is real good at gaining leverage and blocking, which is not something you would think of with a 200-pound.
That's good to hear almost, because I felt that was one of the weaker parts of Corum's profile. Like his career average target share, which isn't the best way of looking at running back. It's just what I have up. It's like 5%. Again, Kyron Williams was at 10. And these are other players I seem to like a little bit more, not than you, because apparently our ranks are identical at this point. But then average, it's like Jonathan Brooks, Bucky Irvin, Will Shipley, maybe Ray Davis and Frank Gore all have over 7% up to 9% of the team's targets on their career average. Like those are the few pass catchers I could find, if you know what I mean. There are a few, like Aeneas Smith. I really have to look into that guy a little bit closer to understand that, but he's got like a 17% target share, which seems off. But he's not interesting. Well, maybe he is. I don't know yet. I don't think I've profiled him. I should go do that. And then there's a few down here. Let's see. Roman Hemby from Maryland and Dylan Johnson from Washington. Both are coming in. around 8% target share for their career average. And again, that's not the best way of looking at it, but it does jump off the riff. In this class, there's a significant lack of pass catches, or significant pass catches. And so the few that are there, you're like, I should go check them out. But sorry, yeah, didn't mean to get off point.
No, that's...
Yeah, it's around 31 to 32% as far as I can figure. Wish I had better questions. That's perfectly fine question. Look at the tangent it sent us on. Oh, yeah. Talk about Romeo Wilson. He's a good one. I should really keep up. LadMakoni, what's going on there? I was disappointed looking at LadMakoni, and that doesn't mean anything. My approval means nothing to LadMakoni. He's got a name like LadMakoni. Also, he's playing NFL football, and I'm playing fantasy football, which are two different things. So we shouldn't care on so many fronts. But especially given some of the names I'd heard talk about him, which does matter to me. Like I have people that I think are good at certain things, and I pay attention, especially when I have a difference. So I want to weight good opinions. But I thought, I don't know. I'll read what I've got. He's a low A dot, low slot player, which isn't a great combination to elevate into the NFL, but it's not nearly as bad as high A dot, high slot, as we were just talking about. My notes literally just say, I don't know if I'm going to be in a minority here, but I'm much less impressed with LadMakoni than I thought I would be with the Georgia's wide receiver one. A place he established his very first year, which is a good thing, in a team aged 19. And the root of it begins with his relative lack of counting volume that year, sub 2.4 opportunities per game. The receiving game just doesn't really exist there, and so being the wide receiver one of it is somewhat less impressive than I would have thought. I actually had to lower my volume threshold to see LadMakoni's percentage numbers just to get a sense of what's going on in that particular first year. Turns out he had a 13.5% dominator rating, 17.5% in his age 20 season, and with 4.2 opportunities per game in that age 20 season, which is a little bit better. But not great. He actually lost the lead role in year 3 as well, which is not something I love to see. You like to see a player improve, if possible, not become less of an offense because someone better comes in just before they go to the NFL. He actually he only played 9 games, which might be part of it. But his per game opportunities with targets remain about the same. So I don't think he was going to be particularly better if he'd stayed on the field more. It just looks like the team started to move away from him even in his senior season. He's relatively low counting stat guy as well, but that doesn't matter to me necessarily, but it's not there in the adjusted numbers either. It's a meager passing offense, but that's why I like receiving yards per team pass attempt and other numbers that kind of try to adjust for how big the offense is, and he's still kind of disappointing on that score. His per attempt numbers or dominators, if you prefer, remain, actually use the word pathetic. They're not disappointing. They don't go green. They look meager. Like he was a very small part of a very small passing offense. He just happened to be slightly above everyone else on the team for the first few years. Which is weird considering I really expected to like this guy coming in based on what I'd heard. 1.4 receiving yards per team pass attempt. Again, we're talking about 2 from running backs in their good year. Wow, that's yards per team pass attempt, but 1.4 is below mediocre. It's hard to find positive examples of that kind of profile. He's frankly a very small part of a very small offense, even relative to the size of that passing offense when he plays. Now, on the other side, he's performing relatively well on those targets. I will say that, according to QB rating and even yards per route run. So we have a player who does well on the touches, but isn't able, or wasn't at least, able to separate himself in Georgia in terms of the overall team offense, even when it's relative to the size of that offense, despite the fact there's no one else of particular importance in that offense, which is what really concerns me, because when someone vaguely comes up, he just starts to disappear in that final year. Brad Jefferson comes up as one possible comparison or a positive NFL. This guy found a role, continues to be a viable NFL player, of a very capable NFL player with fringe fantasy relevance, and Lab was better in QB rating and yards per route run than Van Jefferson. So his per touch basis was actually better with that kind of low level volume. Sorry, these notes run on for a while. So I was really surprised by not liking Lad, and so I wanted to dig in. The only here are mistakes I've made because there were situations I didn't understand, and I tried to go through MT, who was just much smaller part of his offense in college than he should have been before he goes to the NFL and becomes something much more. So there is a route to sometimes college players just don't distinguish themselves in college in that way and then go on to be successful. It's just, I have no way of going, and this is that guy. He seems to be performing well, but he's just, yeah, that's it. I can keep saying it, but that's it.
Well, the Michael Thomas thing,
not that they're the same player before you
no,
they don't play. I'm not saying that at all.
But what I'm no, hold on. The Michael Thomas thing for me, and the thing that you don't get in numbers, is Michael Thomas is one of the 3 best players that I have ever watched on college tape at running a slant. It's been Michael Thomas, it's Davante Adams, and it's Deebo Samuel. Like, those are the 3 that just absolutely stick out. And Cooper Kupp was close, but he didn't run it as effectively, but he did other things that were just blow the doors off. McConkey is not that. He's not that. I think that we're going to have McConkey, we're going to have Roman Wilson, we're going to have a lot of the Senior Bowl studs, the guys who got pumped up at the Senior Bowl this year, be draft darlings because last year Puka Nacua was one of the Senior Bowl darlings. And we're chasing a profile in Puka Nacua that's not one that you can see coming. It's just it's nearly impossible to see that. And again, for me, watching McConkey, he's got really good pace. He sets up double moves really well, understands that he's fast, but he's faster if he's not at 100% until he's ready to put it on. So he's really good at that. He's very sharp in and out of his breaks. So again, a real quick twitch guy. He sets up defenders well. He's an effective run blocker, which doesn't get you fantasy points, but gets you points with a coach. He can set an edge, which a lot of receivers who play slot and can shift outside are not that. They don't set edges. He's really good at multiple levels versus zone coverage. He can find holes in underneath, but he can also get to the second level, and he can beat zones over the top, which if you can do all 3 of those things, that is a bonus. But although he's a good route runner, he's another player whose routes take a long time to develop. So he's not like the quick open player. He's I'm going to set you up with pace and then a double move, and then I'm going to get over the top. And so oftentimes there are receivers on his team already open and have drawn that target. So that's a negative in his corner. He also struggles to separate against really tough man coverage. So if teams press him or if teams get physical with him, he's not a great physical player. And I don't think he has the immediate quickness off the line of scrimmage to win in goal line in short situations. And now we're back to Michael Thomas. We're back to Deebo. We're back to Davante Adams. That's what those guys did better than anybody that I've ever seen. And that is something that LadMakoni lacks. So it's not that he's a bad player. I think he's going to be a fine NFL player, but it's going to be really hard to see him getting more than 50 catches in a season, getting more than 900 yards.
Again, we disappointingly come out in the exact same place where I'm he's solid. I can see a player a team's going to like to have on the field if he succeeds at the NFL level, which is an entirely different question. But what he's doing is clearly good, but he's not going to, it's not someone you funnel an offense through. It's not someone you make a significant part of your offense. He's a viable NFL player for sure. I can see that.
Yeah.
And again, and that's why I mentioned MT, partly because he comes into this profile group, but also because, I mean, there are exceptions, but I'm like you said, I'm not going to be able to see those where those exceptions are, and you're not even seeing it through the tape. So there you go. And that's exactly what I said. I don't. He's solid, but I don't know. I expect him to be a 23 target share guy, which is what you were saying about the 50 catcher thing. And for an NFL team, since he wasn't in college, if he can't carry a team relative to the receiving role higher than 1.4, despite being effective in yards per route run and QB target rating in college, then he's not going to presumably be able to do that in the NFL. But sometimes some people do if you like to dream. And he's got an awesome name, seems like a great guy, and I'm rooting for him. And, you know, just being a great NFL player is a fantastic achievement. And he's definitely got that in his range of outcomes. But I don't see anything to chase here in fantasy. I was really sad, but there you go. I'm doubly sad to hear that we're in the same place. Once again, almost the exact same concluding line. I hate that. Jamari Thrash. He's one I keep staring at. Like, I want to move higher, but I'm trying to be reasonable. Him and Franklin. I like both of those players, but they probably should be below Rome Odunze when you really take a stern look at it. But these are the types of players in other classes I would have just elevated. Like, I like their roles. These guys have got numbers, go green. But being reasonable, I've put them in right behind them in a separate tier. I keep moving Taz, whatever, Walker above and below them because I think there's more mystery to Walker's profile, and Zach had it that way when I first put it out as well. So I was like, maybe that's right. But I keep also pushing them ahead because their production is good. And again, to try to give you a quick version, on Thrash, which sounds much cooler. High A dot, low slot. So he's that NFL player that NFL and we like to dream on, to use a Zach phrase. Sub 11% hit rate, though. 30% above average on his receiving yards, team pass attempt in that cohort, which is really significant since there is such a high upside on that cohort. Again, it's the players you like to dream. If they're successful, they'd be great. But many of the comps that come up in that category are Antonio Golden Gandys. These guys have got lots of good numbers from playing this high efficiency role at different conference levels, which kind of dings Thrash as well. Sorry. And Will Fuller is a nice medium outcome, but you've also got players like Romeo Doubs and Gabe Davis, high upside, and plays a very different role in the NFL, is essentially what I'm highlighting there. In other words, there's a wide range of outcomes for this cohort, with lots of productive misses, but also Thrash himself is a relatively interesting team relative producer, and the type who wasn't overly dependent on contested catches, which I think is significant in this cohort. He's got 16%, which is about right. Golden Gandy, Harmon, two other than productive misses in this category, both are well above 16%. So I think that speaks well to Thrash. But yeah, they are at 20% or above. He's below 16% or below. That's the too long didn't read version of it. I think he's possibly one of these productive misses, but he doesn't seem dependent on the things that probably don't translate as well to the NFL level, which makes me more hopeful. But yeah.
So you mentioned the contested catch rate, and one of my notes on Thrash is he's a deep threat, but he's not a catch point threat. Like he can't win contested catches. Like he's bad at contested catches. He's good at getting over the top. So it's not
that he wasn't dependent on him. It's that he's not good at it.
He's miserable at contested catches. He is though, but like he does some things well. He's really savvy off the line of scrimmage. He can get off press coverage, which is nice for a guy who plays on the outside. He's really good at sinking his hips and changing direction. So being able to create separation like at the stem of his route, he's very good at that. Really sudden. I said I think that he could be one of those death by 1,000 cuts guys. Like he can sit there and run a hitch or a curl or an out at like 7 to 10 yards and make that play every single time, and there's not a thing the defense can do about it. Whether or not he's used that way, I don't know. And he's lacks so much dynamism post catch. So like he's not a guy who catches it and adds yards. He's a guy who catches it and that's where he's at. The initial defender is going to get him and he's done. And he also drops a lot of balls. And again, not that drops are a big deal, but I watched the game where he dropped 4 balls in the same game. And if NFL teams are watching that kernel gets in the back of their head. I think his leeway to fail becomes a little bit thinner, a little bit shorter. So,
all right. Well, I still have.
But again, like not a bad player, but not one of the players that I'm like uber excited about. Like this class has such a really good middle class. Like they're not going to be wide receiver ones, but there are so many players who are going to have top 24 seasons or should have top 24 seasons or could have top 24 seasons in this class. It's just really the depth is really good.
Meet the Robinson. Hey, big fan of your database work. Zach, he's talking to you. No, I appreciate that. Thanks very
much. Sure.
Just wondering, though, what went wrong with Sky Moore? Thought his profile was great. It wasn't. I mean, I was pretty low on him. And talking about productive misses, that's something I've tried to put in work over the last few years. And again, I was the only nerd in fantasy land who was like, Sky Moore's going the way of Tony and all these other hits on these other productive misses and underproductive misses on the Chiefs. Like I was fully out in his rookie build-up and then fully out in his rookie season, and like I never came in. Like I saw where the love came from, but where he was playing, both on the field and the team he was playing for, it creates a lot of potential for productive misses, and I just don't think he stood out relative to the role he was playing and the team he was playing on. Now, we can't make effective team adjustments, but we can take into account team history, and there are a lot of really productive numbers, especially in that role from that team, like Sky Moore, and they just don't elevate. It's something about the offense, it's something about where they play.
I've got my Sky Moore write up. My Sky Moore write up is we've been hurt before. 2022. We've been hurt before. The Mid-American Conference standout wide receiver who looks just a bit out of place against the lower level competition. It feels like Western Michigan, adept at the art of catching Wolverines, appears to be laying another trap for the fantasy football draft community using Sky Moore as bait. Moore is an incredibly sudden route runner, sometimes appearing to actually teleport away from defenders. His quickness becomes blatantly obvious on hitch routes when he breaks off back toward the quarterback 3 or 4 steps before a corner can react. Moore uses his sharpened cutting skills to create separation versus single coverage on slants, where he's able to tack on extra yardage post-catch. At 5'10", 195 pounds, Sky Moore is fearless over the middle, hands catching in traffic to cushion the blow from defenders and bringing the ball in safely. Against most of his conference opponents, Moore was able to beat press coverage fairly easily with his quickness. But in games against upper-level opponents, he struggled to get free from defenders who jammed him at the line of scrimmage. His struggles with press contribute to the feeling that he might be a little bit small and not quite as fast as he needs to be to continue his style of play at the next level. Although Moore often separates in short areas with his quickness, corners close that gap on him rapidly after his initial win. Part of this is a lack of top-end speed, but some of it is that although Moore's feet move quickly on his cuts, sometimes he doesn't actually go anywhere, leaving an easier recovery for the defense. There's certainly potential for Sky Moore to find himself in the position of being a high-volume slot receiver on a team looking to ease the burden of a young quarterback. More likely, however, he becomes a nice third option on an NFL team and a frustrating miss for fantasy.
I looked it up. This is actually what I like about forcing myself to write notes, because I have to work really hard to make my typing legible, and I avoided it for a few years, including I even started tracking my ranks in 2019, pre and post draft, and wasn't including notes because I didn't want to proofread it, and I still don't as much as I need to. But it is fun to be able to do this. So my pre-draft Sky Moore rank was 10th overall in the 4th tier, below Rondell Robinson and even Justin Ross. Like, I was significantly lower on him compared to like Addison. Me and Addison had this conversation because I can see where it came from. Nerds Again 11. Here's what I wrote at the time on 28th of April, apparently, 2022. Okay. So the number one in my pre-draft model came with a Zach Reed premonition. He DM'd me and predicted I'd like him. And he couldn't wait to tell me he didn't like his tape. So fair to say I'm looking at it with a little more caution. From a team with Corey Davis and Greg Jennings in its history, not to mention Dwayne Eskridge, who proves not everyone who plays here does well. At the time, people like Eskridge. Don't ask me why, but they did. Anyway, it's notable that the team's wide receiver has an average of 3 receiving yards per team pass attempt, while the conference average is 2.2. Yes, the team forces production clearly, which is what I was just telling you. And again, you can't just apply team averages like that, but when it comes with a note and there are so many productive misses in that team's history, I think it's noteworthy. However, in his final season at age 20, he was over even the team's average in Dominator, yards per team attempt, which is now receiving yards per team attempt. I changed the acronym, and market share of receiving yards. So he stands out regardless. He has a higher receptions per game and yards per route run than Jennings and is lower than Corey Davis in both. So he's between the two. I'd say with draft capital, which he did get, he's a good bet, which I hate that I wrote, for a top 24 season at least, but his overall production, it's fair to say, is worth being cautious over, in my opinion, especially since he ranks 10th in the 2022 class in his age-adjusted hit rate, which is something I love to go over at the time, not first, despite a decent hit rate for those drafted from his conference. And that's what I wrote, yeah. And the updated version is the thing I just told you. That's the clearer way I try to say it. It's just he was okay productive at a team that forces production in that particular role. I actually love to go back and look at him with 8 on slot, but yeah. And not to victory lap it. Like, I knew he wasn't bad. Like, you can see me I'm always trying to find positives. I want players to hit. But I was notably cautious. And it did help to have Zach Reed's note. The film note was worth it. And then that's the kind of thing, that's the kind of way I do like to try to merge the two. It's like when you see something that you're like, I hate this, but he's clearly doing a lot. I'm like, okay, well, I need to be cautious with that number. And then when you find something substantial to it, where this team has like a 3 yards per team attempt versus a 2 for the conference average. It's like this team is doing something that I probably don't understand because I don't know football or watch it. I'm just a lowly nerd that changes the expectation for this particular role in this particular situation. And after the draft, his value just continued to spiral, and it was kind of easy to stay well below the average with just that little note of caution. Like, yeah, I can see top 24 at some point. But like Zach said, better, more likely to be a wide receiver 3 if he succeeds, and a wide receiver 2 was probably a better premonition. And with that median outcome, if you will, it was really easy to be just lower on him than most than 50% of your draft. And that put you in a better position to get a better player. So what went wrong? I don't know. I don't think he was as good as lots of people just read the raw number go green numbers suggested. But also, God, we actually don't know. Maybe Sky Moore's a lot better than he showed. In the NFL, wide receivers have struggled outside of Tyreek Hill on that offense. Like, just to give the lad his due, like, we actually don't know if we ran reality out 10 different times. Maybe Sky Moore's a lot better for fantasy in 9 out of 10, and we're just living in that one. I ultimately don't know, but there were reasonable notes of caution with his production numbers, which were easy to highlight because Zach told me to look for them.
Well, and even in my write up, it's he could end up being this.
Yeah.
Like there is that potential, and I think that's the thing that because it's such a binary thing. Did the player hit or did they miss? We don't realize that there's such a range, and there are so many factors and so many things that are beyond a player's control. So like Sky Moore could do everything right, and Andy Reid could just be like, I hate the way his face looks, and I'm not playing.
Yeah,
you know,
that's always what I try and rope into the results. Like, I got this right, but let's be fair.
Yeah,
there are a million things that could have caused that. Like, so much of this might be not experience bias. It's like confirmation bias kind of a thing. I didn't like it; it didn't work. Therefore, all my process was correct. I'm not. I've been doing this a minute. I don't think anyone's process is that solid that we can never be entirely sure. That goes all the way to the top with JJ Zacharyson. Like, he's probably the most. We should be the most sure about his takeaways. But I found some reasonable disagreements that I thought were based on things, and sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong. Like, there is no sure certainty that this was never going to happen. Just to give you some good feelings that you tried with Sky Moore. Like, yeah, it could have happened, but that's what I saw.
Like, inside baseball, though, the people who are the most confident about their "I'm right" evaluation are the people that I try to avoid. It's the same way. Like, I just listened to an audio book called Thinking Fast and Slow, Daniel Kahneman, and you'll hear me talk about him all the time if you know me at all. But he is a behavioral economist, won a Nobel Prize, and part of his study that won the Nobel Prize was watching like stock market analysts, watching day traders and guys who actually were stockbrokers, and the people who actually did that for a living were far more reckless and wrong far more often because they were so confident in their own ability to predict the future.
Right.
And there are so many variables that you just can't, because as much as we'd like to think everything is rational, and as much as we'd like to think that we can put in every variable and plug it in and come out with a result that is exactly what will happen, you can't, because there are things that are just luck. There are things that people do that are just not rational and don't don't conform to game theory and don't conform to optimal strategy and that sort of thing. And so again, it's have an idea, and that's you said, like, marrying the two pieces together. I think that is so valuable. It is to me anyway, because I can use your work as a series of checks and balances, because we come at things from such a different direction, but we're trying to arrive at the same place. So it makes such a difference to me to be able to use your work as a series of checks. And I'm glad that you're able to finally use what I'm doing to kind of balance out or
try our best.
Yeah, it's nice.
It's not it's like trying to add an apple to an orange. Like, I mean, it makes a nice fruit salad, but you can't make the apple the orange. It's the same, honestly, with trying to compare. Yeah. It's not even just crossing tape and numbers. It's like, well, this guy's model and this guy's model both like him. Like, yeah, but the process, and they're all counting similar things. Like, some of it's double counting. It's really hard to merge different processes from any angle. You just trying to. My whole thing is trying to be reasonable, like at least know that I'm hitting on most of what we should hit, like things that we should expect to happen based on just what happens most often. And it's something I've mad at myself with, like, it's something that I try to weed out. Puka Nakua, hated him. I hated his profile, not him. Hated his profile. Would go fully all in every time, and I still will, because it's such a low hit random occurrence. Like, I can't predict when that type of profile is good and when it's bad. I don't think anyone can. But then you get a lot of film guys saying they watched it, they liked him, and then he hit, and then there's a confirmation bias. And I try to rope in as much as I can. Good opinions, like good evaluators were saying that. But Zach is one of my go-to film guys, and he didn't see it on the tape that much either. And I was like, okay. But if I go to 3 of the others, they would have said, yes, it's not really possible to hit on everything. You just kind of got to do your best to go. But I should have at least respected the opinion of Derek Brown, maybe. He's a good one who liked Puka Nacua a lot. Enough not to take him unless he was in the 4th. Like, I wouldn't, if he was in the 4th round, I might have taken him.
But
should have been like the 3rd round would have been fine, and I would have had a lot of Puka Nacua, you know? Like, I went a little too hard in the paint with this is what I think. But I'm better at it than I used to be.
but also that so much of his evaluation stemmed from the Senior Bowl.
Yeah.
Like, and again, not to denigrate.
Oh yeah, I got reasons to ignore it, but
like not to denigrate what he did, but like literally, it was radio silence, and then the Senior Bowl happened, and that's fine. Like, he was great at the Senior Bowl, and there have been players that have been great at the Senior Bowl. Cooper Kupp was one. Zay Jones was one. Like, there have been players that have been great at the Senior Bowl, but a lot of them we saw coming before the Senior Bowl. And that's the difference. And again, it was a great get. Like, it was a great get, and that's not like Derek absolutely hit it out of the park. Like, he was the loudest voice for Puka Nacua that I heard, and it was a great hit, but it's still a profile that I'm going to miss every time because I am watching the bigger body of work. I am watching, 8 to 12 to 16 games of the career of these players. And so I'm trying to get a broad slice of what they are more often. And to me, like, Puka was fine, but he did not stand out. And I didn't see, like, what he's doing in the NFL is obviously incredible. Like, it stands out, and it's an absolute miss. I don't know how I can account for that.
But that's the second part I've desperately tried to come better at. It's when wrong, especially year one, just adjust heavier. Like, that's it. Something I've found to be and it's something I've been watching on Nacua this offseason, because he was slightly overdrafted, and people who even get it right sometimes are still dynasty players, and dynasty players got biases, man. And it's been hard to slowly watch him increase and still not really be up there with CD Lamb and stuff. I'm like, if that was whoever I had ranked 1 that year, I'd be so hard in the paint for it. And yet so many, like, not like Derek Brown, but others, and that feel like they hit and I'm willing to force him up there. I'm like, we're done with whether the profile was good at that point. The NFL production matters more. So yeah, it's been interesting to watch. He hasn't fallen and he hasn't landed somewhere I'm like, I'm going to end up trading for Puka Nacua. But I'll tell you who did. There were a few that we disagreed on. They were good in first year, and I was like, okay, wrong here, just going to adjust hard. And I think one was Brandon Ayuk.
Yep.
Because he was half good, half bad. And also Miami, Waddle. Waddle was half good, one good year, one bad year. Didn't really know what to make of it, which has become a bit of a bane in my process.
Yeah.
And you liked him. He came in, had a phenomenal rookie year. I was like, I'm going to be higher on Waddle than everyone else. And I was. And it worked out that second year pretty well. And that's something I've tried to build in as well. That first year matters so much more than everything we do leading up to that first year. Yeah. And you just bet on it. Like, it's just worth placing your bet. And it's hard to adjust. Like, it's hard for me to go from a state of knowing how low a profile and how random and a hit that feels, and whether Derek got it right and others got it right. But I like, you make that bet 10 times, you lose 9 times. In fact, if you make that bet 10 times, you lose 99 times somehow. But there's an extra guy at the end there, and there's so much bad draft capital after bad draft capital. If you want to make that bet, like, it's just not going to be one I make. Yeah. But hard to adjust though it may be, I should, like, at least I know that now. It's like, it's time to give up. It's time to move on. It's a Josh Allen corollary. A little bit, quarterback's a little bit more finicky that way. But, like, I managed to get in on Josh Allen before a lot of dynasty consensus, even though I waited way too long to go, this guy's been out producing Patrick Mahomes for 3 years. Maybe I should have him above Patrick Mahomes. Just a thought. And it took me way too long to realize that. And I was still quicker than so, because again, Dynasty players got bias. And I appreciate that because we play this game so hard. And it's just a note it's worth putting. And it's the same with Sky Moore. Even the people that got him quote unquote wrong by liking him a lot, like my main criticism isn't that. It's not going out after we saw the rookie season matchup. Because again, we could be wrong. Run reality 10 times. Maybe this is just everything I said. But the best thing that we know is majority of the time when that rookie year is bad, you just got to go. You just got to go. Even those few that squeak through and have a better career after that are not worth the risk of losing that relatively small window where you can still catch some of the maybe the second year, maybe the third year hype. For anyone who's not paying attention, like there are very clear thresholds where like 70% of players, you never get that number. 70% of players who go on to do well hit this relatively mediocre mark or one of them. And Sky Moore and others are below it. It's just time to go out hard because you almost never get a chance to place a 70% bet on a player. And after the rookie season's a great one where people still sleep on it. And it's a low mark. Just finish in the top 36, get 600 yards, get over 11 or 12 points per game. They're actually relatively low bars. Before we start debating this intricate stuff, I don't think we fully have a grasp on how it works, like their yards per route run versus the targets per route run. Some people do. It still makes my head spin a little bit, and whether Watson actually is better, really, or good. Like, you don't even have to go there. Just finish in the top 36, like them. Finish outside the top 36, hate them, and you're right 70% of the time. You don't have to be a genius. You just have to be willing to actually, bet on what happens most often.
Yeah.
And you've got this huge advantage. And because dynasty players be dynasty players, the window's almost always there. Like this year, Zay Flowers, really good. He's moved up into an appropriate range, I think, in ranks. Who cares? Is anyone hyping Zay Flowers right now versus still hoping their prospect who didn't quite do enough year one could be good? Like, that's a really easy trade to try and make. Adding something to that maybe player to go get Zay Flowers all day. And Zay Flowers is, again, as I've mentioned in my notes on a few players this year, not a profile I chase, not someone I like pre-draft. I just kind of respected some of the profiles on him from other people, his draft capital, and he wasn't a bad profile, like I was just saying about some of the players in this class. It was pretty solid, but it's just a random kind of a bucket. Like, not a lot of players hit. And again, it's a bottom receiver, scared as hell of those guys at this point. But like, he just hit that mark. And so you got this 70% bet where he's probably going to have at least a pretty solid career from this point on. And people are still dreaming and hoping on players because they were injured, because the QB was bad, because the scheme was bad, who are like 2 and 3% bets that you end up getting a Robert Woods in 3 years. Like why are we doing that? And it's not, I'm a genius. It's just, I kind of remember what happens every year. And I'm willing to admit that I don't know the future. That seems to be my strongest advantage when it comes to this stuff. We're well off into the weeds here. This is a way too good of a question, Meet Robinson. Thanks for joining in. What's with Tez Walker ranking, Zach? I don't like that one. You go. Because he's literally asking you.
Yeah. So I got Tez at 6. And like, I get that is going to feel high. I get that he had kind of a circuitous route to North Carolina where he started off.
Big words.
Yeah, well, so he started off at Eastern Tennessee State. He was hurt and he had a deferred season there in 2019. He transferred to North Carolina Central in 2020, but there was COVID, and so their season got canceled. He then transferred to Kent State in 2021. He played there for 2 years. His second year at Kent State in 2022 was pretty good. 58 catches, 921 yards, 11 touchdowns. He transferred to North Carolina. The NCAA was like, wait. You don't have any eligibility. And North Carolina played whatever it was, 6-7 games. Yeah, 8 games. And then all of a sudden they were like, oh, just kidding. You can play. he came in, was second on the team in receptions, led the team in yards in 8 games. Half of the games, and that's where he was on the team. He's really good off the line of scrimmage, very, very quick. He's got a really good like inside out move, and then he kind of crosses almost like a basketball player to get off press, where like he sets up a defender and then comes back the other way. He's got very strong hands. He catches the ball out away from his body. He's excellent at reading space versus zones. And this is something you will hear me come back to again and again on profiles of players that I like. Being able to manipulate zone coverage, being able to understand where the holes are, being able to sit in lanes, because zones are cheats, Genji. And all zones play, the defenders are covering areas. And so if you're going from one area to another, there is a space where you have been passed off by one defender and haven't been picked up yet by the next defender. And if you understand spatially where you are and can stop, we call that sitting down in that lane, you give the quarterback a really easy place to throw. Not only does Tez Walker do that, he can also take the top off, so he can go, if a safety cheats up, he is fast enough and intelligent enough to see that and get over the top. He also gets over the top against man with consistency. So he can be a deep threat. He can be an intermediate threat. He can be a threat after the catch. The issues with Tez Walker is he does not improvise at all, like hardly at all. If he's supposed to run an out route, if it's covered, he's still running an out route. Especially against man coverage. If he is, running a 9 route and the defender is there, he's still running a 9 route. He doesn't really do a good job working back to his quarterback unless he's running a hitch. So again, he just doesn't have that ability to riff. He's not a freestyle player. And because of this, he sometimes struggles with man coverage and cushion. Because if he's supposed to run a double move, even if he's got cushion enough that a hitch and go isn't gaining you anything, he's still going to run it. So, like, again, like I love but part of that is he just doesn't. I don't think he has been in a system long enough and been taught you have the ability, you have the leeway to do this, and so. I assume that somebody can say, hey, if you see this, do that, and he can do it. That may not be part of his game. I haven't seen it yet, so I'm kind of extrapolating and making a leap. But again, 6'3", 175, I think he weighed in bigger than that, but 6'3", 175 is an older prospect. He's going to be 23 in June, but there is so much that I like about what he does that in this group, once you get past Harrison, Neighbors, Worthy, Brian Thomas, Odunze, Devontae Walker has more, upside. If I'm going to take a swing, I'm going to take a swing there. And I think he's the best of what's next, but he's in that same tier with McConkey, Troy Franklin, and Malachi Corley for me.
Same. I have Franklin above him, but similar. It's just if you're going to take a swing. I don't like per game numbers at all in general, especially for rookie evaluation. I think I'm fairly well on the record for that. But I do think there's a difference between 3 games in a larger sample driving the ultimate profile, like a Laquan Treadwell. That was Laquan Treadwell, as Terrace Marshall as well, versus a player only playing 8 games and being very good in each of those games. I think that's slightly different. My notes are a little underdeveloped on him because I'm a little conflicted, but he's clearly a take-a-swing player. He's got like a 17 ADOT. That's way too high. That's why no one needs to run that far down the field, in my opinion. But he's playing at a high volume when on the field. He just didn't play enough games that he easily matches up. And so there's some questions there. It was a little bit of a per-game argument. My notes are a little underfilled, but this is just barely a sentence I've got. High ADOT. Low slot, very high ADOT, a foot and brackets, just in case you weren't sure. Very high ADOT. But good yards for route run numbers, like a Puka Nakua, which is not something I chase. But he was running 30 routes per game when he was on the field, which is a full roll. That's good volume. in his best season as well. His comps run from James Washington to George Pickens, which is about describes it.
Yeah.
And my feelings and uncertainty of the 12 of 13. Wait, that doesn't make sense. Ignore it. I'm trying to rope his profile into Adunze, Thrash, and Franklin, who I find some similarity to. Adunze is clearly above, but Thrash and Franklin, I put him in the same tier. He's running a similar target share, like 90% career average is nothing to shy at, with a higher yards per route run. His overall receiving yards per team pass attempt is not going green, but it's okay. And where you've got this 8-game sample in his best season, because I think it's slightly different. I think there might be more in the underlying profile than the direct comparison of number going green might suggest. It's essentially what I'm trying to write here. There's upside here. That's why I put Pickens and Washington. They were two really high upside that I had ranked slightly differently than consensus as well. I was higher on Pickens, lower on Washington. Mixed results at best. But that's where Walker lives. And also Franklin, to be fair, and Thrash, and a little bit of Dunze. There's a lot of wild range of outcomes here. He could be a bit player who provides big chunk yards and upside on a weekly basis, but never like Gabe Davis. And he could be something a little bit more phenomenal than that, or he could be nothing. Like there's a wide range here and a wild range that's a little hard to catch. But I like that he was playing at volume when he was on the field, and the real restrictions of his overall profile. One, he wasn't a big enough part of the team offense, receiving yards per team pass attempt. But that's not everything. It's my main thing, but it's not everything. And it's close. With this phenomenally high ADOT, I think you can adjust that down a little bit because they tend not to be the offense unless, or that much of a significant part of the offense, even as he was, outside of being really good at it. But Zach seems to have some concerns that doesn't have the savvy yet. But yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, I'm underfilled on it, but those are some of the notes I've got to work off, which kind of match up to some things you're saying, Zach, at least. And that's why I've got him 7th overall. Franklin, I feel much more confident in his bucket, where he's at least going to be drafted and a decent NFL player, presumably, whereas Walker's could be, and no, he could be anything in this particular category. But that mystery at that level of we're taking a shot, that mystery carries with it some intrigue, when you don't know for sure, rather than I saw him play a full college career and he's pretty good versus he's pretty good and I didn't see him. What's the baseball analogy, Zach? Would you rather take the guy with perfect form or terrible form with the same number? And that's kind of how I feel like Walker. This is terrible form, but similar comparable numbers. What if that form improved? And in this case, it's not form, it's sample size, but you know what I mean?
Well, and again, this isn't even injury. This is not his fault at all. It's literally the NCAA saying, no, you can't play. And then going, oh, just kidding, you can. And then him immediately stepping in and being like, I am the best receiver on this team.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of what did I used to call it, the Calvin Ridley rule, where people were obsessed with age instead of age adjusted. I'm like, you can't. Like, you can only judge a player when they're able to play. And Ridley, if I remember right, couldn't play because of a declaration problem as well from his high school. He had to wait an extra year, and so he's constantly a year older than everyone else. But the minute he steps on the field at a year elevated, but even relative to that age, was just dominant. Like really, really dominant. Like if you weren't obsessed with the age number, you would have put him one ever. Kind of a profile. And I was like, you can't just do it by year 1, year 2, year 3. The age matters because it's about physical development, but you have to take into account things that aren't about them earning time instead of when they can play. There's a slight difference there. Again, it's not something you can easily adjust for there. So therefore, Walker is great. I just think there's a little mystery there, and with the numbers being decent enough, that mystery has a lot of intrigue. That's why.
He literally first game, like not being on the field with the team. First game, 6 receptions. And second game, 6 receptions, 132 yards, 3 touchdowns. Like it was not like miss a beat. It was all right. Here is Tez Walker, best receiver on North Carolina.
And that's ultimately the main age single that we're looking for. Like, great players are going to show out all the time. You know, ideally, they don't all, to be fair, some develop. But the age does matter because he was more physically developed than most players who walk on the field for the first time. And I do think that matters when you're putting up like 18-year-olds versus 23-year-olds. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I was a lot physically, despite being a fairly active sporter at 18, I was a lot more physically strong and capable and confident at 23. Like, I could have crushed me.
Yeah.
And then you're talking about guys that have actually been in a college weight room instead of just trying to do your best in high school. Like that, it's significant. That's why the age matters. That physical development, like biological at a certain point, combined in. So the age does matter. But again, this is why I end up context profiling instead of model profiling. Because I think model profiling, hopefully, I hope, has a little more holes in it because you have to make certain assumptions that you just have to. It's fair. And I don't want to. Like, I want to see some intrigue. I want to see some mystery. I think we can reasonably expect some of that. But yeah, he might fall. But I can't put him above Franklin. But based on the film assessment, I just gone Thrash. I did move him above Thrash. Yards per route run isn't sticky year to year. What do you think, P? It's relatively sticky compared to most things. It's not better than receiving yards per team pass attempt at the NFL or the college level. And sticky specifically, just in case you know, Genji, because I know you're just trolling me here, that means is relatively similar from year 1 to year 2. So you get 2.1 yards per route run in year 1 and 2.3 in year 2. So it's relatively similar. So it's moving within a range instead of wildly converting like a touchdown rate does. So you get 100 yards per touchdown one year and 200 yards per touchdown another. There's a much wide range of outcomes that you can expect. It doesn't stick to a player, as it were. That's where the term comes from. And in that regard, no, yards per runs is a very good statistic. It's just not magic. And I think in some instances, if you were just using one number, in fact, I prefer team relative volume, like receiving yards per team pass attempt or something. But yards per run is fine. It models pretty closely to receiving yards per team pass attempt because it's trying to do a similar thing. But yards per run is doing it relative to their on-field presence rather than relative to the size of the team offense. And I prefer that. And I think it does a little better in some ways because you can compare that more evenly somewhat from one player to the next. Like comparing a player in Baltimore versus a player on the Chiefs is a little sussy when you're just talking about their on-field time versus when you can modify it by how many times those teams throw. I think that's a little where it gets a little edge. But no, it's fine as a number. It's fine. It's a really good statistic. There's a reason it became everyone's new hot sauce that they all wanted to spread on their profiles. It's pretty good. But it's relatively sticky. Yeah.
But it gets over just like the new hotness, it gets overused and overconfident but yeah,
no, I think that's a good way of it's fun. Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it.
But again, that's Genji,
why I don't like. Honestly, the reason I went so hard at it in the beginning, and I still do a little bit, is you have to pay money to get it, and it's not kicking the ass of everything else, and it's so prominent in every popular analyst, even when they're not particularly analytically involved. That's what they talk about. And I don't mind that. Everyone's going to make money. It takes hard work, valuable work to collect that information. We should value it. But receiving yards per team pass attempt is free. Like, you have to collect 2 numbers instead of 1 and do a division, but that's about it.
Whoa, I'm out.
I'm out. I think the whole industry going, this is the number you need. And to get it, you have to spend money, especially before it became reasonable. Like now, even I can get behind the paywall with the help of my patrons. Before that, when it became popular, it was like $400 a year to get behind the paywall to get. That's just for the NFL. I'm like, there are plenty of us poor NFL fans who just want to join in. Can we please take a look at your magic number? No, then you got to prove it. And they never proved it before we got behind the paywall, and I hated that. Like it was never comparably tested between other statistics. It was just, this is great. Look at this graph with just yards per run on it. How great it is. Like, could I see the relative effect? No. It just, trust me, it's better. And and then when the price dropped, suddenly they're like, yeah, here's all the comparison testing so that you didn't pay attention to a muggins like me doing it for free. Because who would? I'm terrible at communicating it. And there's a reason they're the ones that aren't free. But I just resent that kind of stuff, I guess. Like, I want to play too. It's a number, and data's technically free as judged by the Supreme Court. So could we all just take a look at the numbers? What are you scared I'm going to find? That's a feeling I always get. Why won't you show me? Why won't you show me? Show me your magic number. What are you afraid I'm going to find? And then until I get to look, I don't know how to. That's just me, right? I can't. It's not that I don't believe you. It's that I would like to find it myself. So, like, I know, like, I know what's going into it. I know I can get my own idea about it. I don't have to constantly call you or tweet you. Could you do this assessment for me real quick? Because I don't understand it. Because I don't know.
Proprietary, Peter.
I'd rather teach and then or be taught and then be able to do it myself than have to come hat in hand all the time to ask. Man, I don't know. I got a big chip on my shoulder. No idea where it came from. It's undeserved. I think Yacht Run is overrated. See, this is where I start going the other way because it's a solid statistic as far as I can go. Like, it's fair, it's fine. Points per game, if you just like points per game, kicks the crap out of everything. If you just want to do fantasy predictions, like, and that's also free for the most part. So, but they tell us different things when we're comparing different players in different ways, and I think that's what's overrated. The idea that there is a good statistic and a bad one is the misconception. Like, even unsticky, unpredictive numbers can be useful, and like, it's not like they're bad because they don't fit in a moral and they don't stick. It's like they tell you something. It's just figuring out what and how valuable you can find that in the way you want to assess players and move forward with the game. But yeah, it's a very fine statistic. It's top tier for sure. Air yards also free. It's part of why I love Josh Hernsmeyer, because that came out to be the popular one. It was like, and here's a website with all the data for free. Let me know what you find. Like, that was fantastic. That's the way I tried to model myself after a little bit. I just want to be Frisco Josh when I grow up, not that handsome, but I'll take what I can get. How many wide receivers in this draft are you rate higher than Addison?
2.
He'd be in the tier.
Yeah, like, he and Worthy are pretty close for me, but he is below, to me, below Harrison Jr. and below Neighbors. Like, I don't have any qualms about saying that. That's
fair. Let's see. I think Harrison would definitely get above him. He's got a really rare model score. And despite the dangers of that particular role translating, I just got to put that guy probably above Edison in the same way that JSN was above Edison, to be fair. Well, so marginally. Sorry, I'm talking to figure it out because I don't have an answer off the top of my head. So by all means, go ahead.
Well, so Cypher, I'll give you even more than you asked for, because I happen to have my historical list of players that I have graded out since 2017, and it goes CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Marvin Harrison, tied with AJ Brown, Rondell Moore, Jamar Chase. Pay no attention to Rondell Moore. No, look, we miss sometimes. Corey Davis. We miss sometimes. Corey Davis, DJ Moore, Malik Neighbors, Jordan Addison, Jackson Smith and Jigba. They're tied. Then it goes Cooper Kupp, Devontae Smith, Xavier Worthy. So, like, that's where I have the top of this class. Like, you're down to whatever, 15 or 16 or 17 that I've watched since 2017, and Worthy is in there. But there are 2 players at the top that are in the top 10 for me that I have watched since 2017. And again, I'm not always right. In fact, I'm often wrong. But that's what I have got. I've kept track. I've got my historical grades. I can go back to 2017 and look at, and honestly, you can probably do that too, because I'm very open with my process. It's either on the Dynasty Dummies podcast, or you can find it in tweets, because I always tweet out my top 12 wide receivers and running backs every year. So I'm pretty transparent about all of this. But the answer is 2 above Addison.
Yeah, I think he'd be in the same tier, but he'd probably be third. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
and
what you do.
that was all like that's all rookie pre-draft because that's how I do
Oh
my
yeah, for
evaluation.
sure. That's a good point.
For me, it's all rookie and it's all pre-draft. So like if you
Because that's
see
what we
those,
are.
yeah,
That's where we're at. Yeah,
yep,
and that does matter. I fell in love with Anderson's profile, to be fair, and I've
oh,
just
he's
kind of
great.
accepted Harrison and Neighbor's profile. That's probably different, and that's
Yeah,
because he was slightly undervalued based on just the hype around everything else in that class, and that's why I'm having a hesitation. But he does score third in my model, and all three have solid numbers, so I don't think I would be like, oh, Addison is clearly better.
right.
So yeah, if this was all the same class, I'd probably easily put him third and be remarkably excited about that class. To
Yeah,
be honest, who's this year's Tank Dell? There isn't one. There wasn't a
Xavier
last
Worthy.
year's Tank Dell. There's only been one. Yeah, but if you're talking about the guy, I think everyone's going to be a little lower on. Yeah, it's worthy. Yeah.
Like people are gonna
Well, no,
people.
no, Karen.
What? Oh no, people are not going to have Worthy at 3. People are not going to have Worthy. People are probably going to have Worthy down 7, 8 as a wide receiver. And to me, that just screams, hey, we're going to get a value on Worthy. Worthy's going to be below Odunze. He's probably going to be below Troy Franklin. He's probably going to be close to being behind Brian Thomas. He's probably going to be close to being behind LadMakoni when people get the aggregate ADP and all the talking heads are going. And so, like, to me, I think that he is going to be not only because he's undersized, and that's the Tank Dell thing, but also he's going to be undervalued. You're probably not going to get him in like the third round, like you could get Tank Dell, but
I know his speed's going to catch attention. I'm seeing him ranked third on DLF sometimes. I know we might have more competition than we like, but it is interesting because we disagreed a little bit on. No, we didn't disagree. You like Tank Dell, but you prefer Brashy Rice.
I
It
did.
depends how you want to compare who Tank Dell is from a class, right? And
Yep.
Worthy's a really good name, who we both have third, and I'll keep him there as long as this draft isn't wild. If you're talking about the player, I think is more of a second round pick. Like Worthy, I'm really happy to take in the late first right now.
Corley.
Outside of, yeah, Corley's interesting. That's even a little lower though. I think expecting second and third round draft capital. Brian Thomas, I don't know how high everyone else is on him. I like him a lot more than I think some nerd profilers are going to come out with. And Franklin, and yeah, those are the names that kind of stick out to me as I'm kind of off kilter, but we're not talking top tier value either. And that's kind of where I like Tank Dell. Like I was really excited to draft him in the second round, and I'm going to pretend to you guys now. I told you to draft him in the late first. That's where I'm at with Worthy, which is more where I was at with Josh Downs, even though you weren't as high on Josh Downs. So there's an interesting, I don't know what Tank Dell is from that class, but there's a few names maybe.
The problem with Brian Thomas and Troy Franklin, and it's a similar problem, is they are going to, and I think Franklin suffers from this more than Thomas does. They're going to struggle to drive volume.
Yeah, that's fair because of the roles they play. Yeah, they're high low slot
Yeah.
players, and the reason we like Tank Dell was because he was so good at that effective group.
Yep.
But there aren't a lot of players that fit that effective group, this year. Even Worthy's high slot on average was a little bit of a weird one.
Well, and
Let's see, low A dot.
that's why I said
where's the
Malachi Corley. Like I think Malachi Corley's that archetype.
Corley, I like. Hang on.
You like Cowing a little bit?
I like Cowan, yeah, a little bit. I love the cursor players. Give me all the cursor players.
Malik Washington is that type of player too.
Yeah, Tank Dell, for example, played a low A dot, kind of a low slot rate. So it's kind of low and low, but it was at 48% slot. So that level of player, I know this is a weird question to get hung up on, but I don't do comps.
I don't think
either,
there is one.
There isn't. But like, who would? Ricky Parcell? No, I don't like Ricky Parcell.
Pearsall, yeah.
Pearsall, sorry.
No, I haven't watched him yet either.
There isn't a lot of players that have that type. So I don't think I can do it by role.
So
there isn't a really productive player in Tank Dell's type of role in this year's class. So there kind of isn't one. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like Jalen McMillan may be that type of player.
LadMakoni is an unproductive version of Tank Dell.
Yeah. Well, so Jalen McMillan, Washington, in 2022 was 79 receptions, 1,098 yards. Again, in that same wide receiving core with Jalen Polk and Rome Odunze. And then this past year he got injured. So he was the player who led that Washington team that had Odunze and Jalen Polk in receptions 2 years ago. And then this past year he was injured. So he didn't play a full season. So that may be your guy who is a discount, who is not necessarily the high ADOT player. Polk kind of assumed his role once McMillan went down. So that may be the guy. I actually think McMillan may be better than Polk, even though I have Polk in my top 12. I haven't finished watching McMillan yet.
I don't like Polk that much, but that's fine.
I mean, he was 12. Let's not get crazy.
Yeah. The Tajee Washington, I don't think I've even ranked yet, but I mean to look at, who's got a similar role and a slightly better model score than I expected, but I don't know too much about him. The simple answer is, and a guy with that level kind of role who was actually really productive, so none. But if you're talking about, like we were started out with, players we like a little bit more than average that we hope to grab in the second, worthy, but I would easily grab him in the first at this point. That's more, that compares more directly to how I felt about Josh Downs at the time. Or again, they're different roles, but Thomas and Franklin stand out to me a little bit. Sammy S, 10 teams, start 12, Superflex. Send the 201, the 202, and the one for the one. Get the 107. Yeah, tier up. And there might be somewhat of a tier between the very early second and the 7, but that's a shinier thing that's easier to trade. And actually, I think the top 7 picks are different than the top 13 picks in this class. I would happily package those 2 seconds up for that first. There are several tier breaks, and I haven't exactly got a draft board yet. Just to be clear, I don't know where the draft board tiers are, but I think the top 2 in the quarterbacks are clearly different. I think there's a very clear top 5 in this class. That's a tier I want to trade into. There might be a sub tier in there. I haven't decided yet. But the top 5 in this year's class, which is a really heavy tier 1, which is why I'm wondering if there's a second tier. But the top 5 is a very different prospect from the whole rest of the class. That's where the line is, the big line. And I think you've at least got 3 or 4 players after that. So that accounts for your 107 pick that I think are different prospects than everyone else. And then you've probably got another tier that bleeds into the mid-second. But again, I haven't quite gamed this out yet. That's roughly where I'm at.
So, and part of this depends on how many quarterbacks are drafted highly too.
That's a big part.
So you may end up with 4 quarterbacks that are drafted highly, depending on what happened. Like again, depending on what happens with there are like 3 quarterback wild cards in this class. After so you've got Caleb Williams, you got May. You've got Jaden Daniels. So you've got the kind of 3, and then you've got this wild card, JJ McCarthy. You have Dr. Penix, the Washington quarterback, Michael Penix, and also Bo Nix. And so it depends on where NFL teams take them. If teams take them in the top 15 picks, then all of a sudden you've got to kind of take notice of that. And so the tier at the top will get bigger necessarily in Superflex because of the value of getting quarterbacks and getting, and here's the other thing. So value of getting quarterbacks, the value of those picks goes up. Your chances of hitting on a quarterback don't go up. So, like, our ability to pick quarterbacks and pick the right quarterbacks is terrible. It's terrible.
It's really bad.
And
that's speaking of someone who's had some random good luck in that area recently. Like, it's just luck. That's right. I can tell.
Look, like I am saying it's terrible, but like I liked Deshaun Watson when a lot of people didn't. I liked Patrick Mahomes when a lot of people didn't.
Jalen Hurts all in, Lamar Jackson all in.
I like Lamar Jackson. I like Jalen Hurts. Like
CJ Stroud. I'm one of the few who lucked out having him above the other two in my ranks. Just
and like
hey.
I have done fairly well, but holy cow, I suck at that. Like, it's so hard to evaluate quarterback and be good at it. And so understand that the value of those picks and what actually happens with those picks are two different things. And so if you can use those picks to get a sure thing, that's so my open for the Dynasty Dummies podcast this week, or at least part of getting into our talking, is going to be, don't get bored taking a profit. Like if you can trade one of these maybe for a player that is productive now, you do it. You do it, and you get value for those picks. You get production for those picks. You get a player who is already producing, more likely to continue to producing than the guy who's never been in the league and do it. Now, again, there are going to be players that come in and become Patrick Mahomes, become, whoever the next, because they have to come from the rookie class. That's the only way people come into the league. That's how things are funneled. But you have to understand the percentages, the chances that you get this wrong, that we get this wrong. And so, like, to me, yeah, I'm sending the 201 and the 202 for the 107. I'm not necessarily making the pick at 107, but I would much rather have the 107 than the 201 and 202. Because I think I can turn that into either a better player or more value in a trade. So again, if there are 4 quarterbacks taken in the top 10, top 15, right? All of a sudden you've got 4 quarterbacks. You've got Marvin Harrison Jr. You've got Malik Neighbors. So now we're at 6. You've got Brock Bowers. Now we're at 7. And you're still happy that you have that 107. And you can probably trade it for, a handful if you want to, or you can stick and make the pick of whoever's there, whether it's Neighbors, whether it's Bowers, whatever.
Genji, what do you smoke, man? Maybe it's just tobacco, but a Hyatt Franklin comparison is wild. Just to my eyes. No, I like Franklin a lot more than Hyatt.
Yeah, Franklin does a lot more than Hyatt, but they both are almost exclusively downfield players. So like that part of it I get as a comparison, but I think Franklin does a lot more downfield than Hyatt. I think he's able to get over the top with speed. He's got great ball tracking, great hands, is a hands catcher, catches the ball away from his body, is able to use his body to shield the ball from defenders at the catch point, has great body control, which is interesting. 6'2", 170, he's a little bit thin, but has really good body control and adjusts to bad balls really well. And he's got a real good release off the line of scrimmage. He's very quick, can get by defenders, but he is repeatedly bothered by contact. He can be steered off route. If a defender gets up and presses him, he struggles to get off press coverage. And Troy Franklin is not a yards after the catch player, even though he is really fast, which is a little bit of cognitive dissonance. Like, you see a fast player and you're like, oh, I can't wait until he gets the ball. But he is often taken down by the initial defender, whatever. Low. Yeah, whatever defender
like
is with
1
him.
yard after reception. Yeah, it's bad.
Yeah. But a part of that is because he's getting so far down the field and making contested catches when you're making a contested catch, invariably the defender is with you. That's the contested part.
Yeah.
So it's easier to
Oh, that
tackle
makes
you.
sense. Now I get it. Yeah, like Hyatt
But
was
like,
dealing with like 8% contested catches. He was at 16. Yeah.
Genji, you should
Actually
go
have
back.
Hyatt's slot rate a lot higher.
Yeah, and Genji, you should go back. And Hyatt was used a lot in motion and slot and place to kind of scheme him free releases, because he was even less of a physical player than
14%
Franklin.
target share to 17% is a little bit of a league difference, as is most of the numbers. But I get it. I'm actually somewhat interested. Don't get it twisted. I'm not like, oh, Franklin every draft. But like I was a 2 tanks strategy. But I was barely. I thought Hyatt was going to be highly drafted because of his role, high A dot role. Very few of them in that draft class, and I was all ready to fade it to high heaven. And then he wasn't drafted, and I didn't have to worry about it.
Well,
not drafted highly.
I mean, it's hard to say face planted for a guy who ran a 4.4, but he face planted the 40 at the combine for what people thought. Like if he'd been a 4.3 guy, you would have seen he would have been just like every other John Ross that goes early like that. So that saved that saved the community at large from being like, look at the draft capital. So
how do we sign again? Anyway,
Yeah,
Alan Davis. Good evening, Alan Davis. Thank you very much. I gotta speed up. I gotta get going.
Let's go. We can't have any more yards per team pass attempt questions.
Night Mitchell looks good to my eyes. Your eyes suck. No, I'm kidding. Numbers obviously are underwhelming. He's a year 2, should honestly be wash if he played half the year dealing with a high ankle sprain. Injuries are much like the Walker thing. Like, I don't mind adding reasonable context. Like, you can only judge if they can play, right? But it's also not an excuse for being bad. Well,
he's ahead of Brendan Rice for me.
I definitely have looked at him. Where are my ranks again? Where am I looking? No, I hated him. Sorry. I do him the fit. I have him with Coleman. Like, these are guys who could definitely have an impact in the NFL, but I don't think so much in the fantasy space. Yeah. High A-dot, low slot, like the rest of this damn class. The most common roll bucket in this class, and one of the NFL likes to take shots at, playing in Texas in the Big 12, opposite Worthy. So, no, I like Worthy instead. In his final year, transferring from Georgia in the SEC, was his best year, and probably means the NFL will look at him because of where he's playing. And this transfer, plus his inability to gain any traction in Georgia, probably means the pre-draft model is unfairly tanking his overall production score because it's low. But to be clear, even this last year is disappointing. In his cohort, the A-dot and slot bucket, we do have DK Metcalf and Terry McLaurin and George Pickens potentially as positive comparisons. But here's the thing. I don't think he passes that test either. Metcalf's best year in points per game in yards per run and receiving yards team pass attempt does look a little low like Mitchell's, but that's because his actual best year was only 7 games long and isn't filtering into the sample, unlike with Mitchell. I think DK's profile is hiding deeper rather than comparing well to Mitchell. McLaurin has lower receiving yards per pass attempt. I went through all the comparisons and why he doesn't evenly compare to all 3 of those guys. I think he's potentially NFL impact player because of the role, and he's fairly effective at it, but I don't see any of the hits in his category comparing well to him, essentially. Sorry, but he's got a great name, so I hope you're right and I'm wrong. Just chilling, Genji. Gerald Robinson, what would you say the lesson people learn from Sky Moores outside of overvaluing landing spot? I hopefully will learn that around about the Clyde Edwards-Helaire spot or any of the other times landing spots significantly changed our opinions.
Either way,
I would say for me, and I kind of saw it, I kind of was aware of it beforehand, but it's while there is no overall team adjustment, it is fair to take into account team history, especially relatively recent team history. And if every wide receiver on that team in a similar role is outproducing the conference average by double, then maybe that team's doing something different rather than every one of them being a top tier player. especially when none of them hit. Again, you can't do that every time and everywhere, and it's not a fair way to ding a player, but it is reasonable to have concerns about a team just fluffing their numbers in certain areas a lot. Yeah. I would say that's my main lesson. I don't know if that's everyone's. Maybe the landing spot is everyone's best lesson.
Yeah. I don't know.
Zach sounded like he might have had something.
Well, I mean, it's again, a lower conference player who looks like he's better than everybody in his conference. This is where I actually pay attention to the combine, and him being a slot player and having a 3-cone above 7 seconds speaks to that little bit of a lack of dynamism. And again, this is what I saw on tape is, yeah, he looks like he's quick, but he's not actually quick. His feet are moving fast, but he's not moving quickly. And defenders are able to recover on Sky Moore. So it's like series of checks and balances, figure out what you're looking for and then figure out how to see if what you're looking for or what you saw is actually the case. And like that to me is like Sky Moore, people just ran out because they were like, look, he catches the ball a lot and he's a slot receiver. And you gotta take into account like how he's doing that and not just that he does it. I mean, I think it's the same. It's literally the same lesson Sky Moore and Treylon Burks, because like the things that I didn't like about Treylon Burks in terms of him at the catch point and him like he'd create separation, but then he'd lose separation and he'd just barely make the catch. He was doing it in the SEC, so it's a little bit different, but like that's a similar thing. And so it's one of those in the back of my mind. There's that little kernel of, okay, now I'm watching for players that do that.
I appreciate your brain burst. I'm reading that, but it's funny. Zach, hypothetically, the Patriots trade for Fields and then take MGH at 3. MHJ, sorry. Are you happy?
I mean, that's fine, but then you still got to figure out quarterback in 2 years. Like you do. Like I think Fields is a fine NFL quarterback, but I don't think Fields is a quarterback that you can win with if he's not on a rookie deal. And he's only got, you're only on a rookie deal another year or two. And so happy is not exactly how I would describe it. I don't think I'm going to be happy.
Essentially, there's no way to make a Patriots fan happy except bringing back the Brady era.
No.
Once you've lived through that, there's no
so what would have made me happy is going outside the organization to get a head coach, which they didn't do. It would have made me happy bringing in a McVay, Shanahan, McDaniels disciple for offensive coordinator, which they missed on. They didn't do. And so it's meet the new boss, same as the old boss. And so like, to me, in order to move forward with the Patriots, like you tear it down, like let's do something different. Like, and Fields is not the answer to that. Like, it's not. I don't think them taking a quarterback at 3 is the answer, even though they probably will. Like, to me, the answer is you trade out of 3, you add offensive line, you add defensive line, you add defensive backs, and then you figure out either a free agent quarterback in the future, or you end up back where you are and draft one. And everyone's like, oh, you're not guaranteed to get back to 3. I get that. I fully get that. But you're also not going to get a better return for a pick than you are for this one, unless you're above 3. I mean, this is a class where there are solid quarterbacks. I think the Patriots are more than a quarterback away. It's very ugly.
And I get this. Thanks, Brayburst. Peter, do you have biased players with last name Howard, such as Jordan Howard or Roger Howard? I'm particularly self-hating, so no, opposite. No. Anthony, yay, I get a lullaby back. Oh, happy to help. Frank N. I am in my nitpicking stage. Sounds good. So the rookie talk. So let's pick on Caleb. Is there any part of what you, any part of you that buys that he was perfect, is in a perfect situation for all?
He
of
wasn't,
college
though.
in both terms of coaching and weapons.
This past year, it was not perfect, but I have not watched quarterbacks yet. I just started watching tight ends. I've watched 3.5 tight ends. I probably will watch another 1 or 2 and then start quarterback. So I, Frank, am not nitpicking yet. I'm not there. And I don't care that he paints his fingernails. I don't care that he loves his mom. Like all of the narratives around Caleb Williams, I don't care. I'm going to watch what he does on the field. And in 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks, I will give you a write-up on the Dynasty Dummies, probably the day before here. You can ask me about Caleb Williams, and I'll be able to tell you what I think also. Maybe before that, but it'll definitely be 4 weeks. I'll have my full kind of estimation on him, but I am not there yet. There's so many wide receivers in this class that
I know, right? It's so many.
Man, it's like I've watched 17. I've watched 17, and there are still probably like 6 more guys that I need to watch. And it's like, this is dumb. So it's such a deep
so many
class.
more than that. It's just stupid. The too big class. I actually have something of a quarterback process for rookies. I'm kind of rolling out a little bit, and I did podcast. It's the first podcast I did in the rookie series. No, I like Caleb Williams pretty well based on that very, very tenuous early attempt at having a quarterback process for rookies again. I think he looked fairly solid. I don't think he looked as good as CJ Stroud randomly, but I think he looked better than Bryce Young, if that helps. I was interested to hear, it's the first time I've listened to Rookie Talk, you on the Superflex, you seem to be describing more of a Lamar Jackson than a Patrick Mahomes. Is that fair to say when you look at Caleb from the little you've watched?
No.
Okay. I got something wrong then. I'll re-listen.
No. He's just been like this past year. He's been kind of happy feet, but it's because their offense changed and their offensive line is not.
You were
great.
saying essentially that he makes plays outside of the pocket if you create opportunities for him to create plays rather than him being a pocket passer, which I just randomly assumed the number one QB was a pocket.
Well, but that's what Mahomes does. Like Mahomes isn't a pocket passer either. Like Mahomes creates outside of the pocket and it has the ability to
Russell Wilson with that, but Karen.
Yeah, I mean Russell Wilson
is scrambling.
Kind of that way too. Roethlisberger was kind of that way too. Although they all kind of have a different way of doing that, and that's not how I view Lamar Jackson. His ability.
I just thought outside the packet and thought guy running. QB's way too complex for me.
Like Jaden Daniels is probably going to get the Lamar Jackson label in this class.
Yeah, obviously, yeah.
But
that makes sense. Sorry. He was a Lincoln Riley offense in all 3 years. Played in the conference that notably don't play defenses at all. No defenses. And where he did play Rio defense, he threw 3 picks.
You can only play who's in front of you. I mean,
true.
That's kind of the way it is.
My process at quarterback isn't deep enough to try and address this. Sorry, I don't think so, but I don't think we can make those. But I mean, you said it was nitpicky. That's fair. Yeah. It's okay to just not like something on a profile. You don't have to launch him up to this is actually Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen to be reasonably interested. That's fair. Honestly, every game I watch from Caleb, he has 1 or 2 wow plays. Yeah, stay away from that. Stay away from just that's part of what I like about mine and Zach's process when I do get to apply it. You stay away from the 2% of plays that are wowy. And what does he do most often all the time? And is that good?
Yeah, and like if what he does most of the time is good, and he has wild plays, yeah, let's go. But if what he does most of the time is Zach Wilson and he has wild plays, which Zach Wilson did, and people were excited about Zach Wilson, and I'm watching going, no, like no. But
I do think turnovers, sacks, getting hit instead of giving yourself, all of those concerns for a quarterback. Yeah.
Yep.
Have you been doing more work on the QB process? A little bit, but I did a little bit, and then I had to dive into wide receiver and running back, so I haven't been able to advance it since that podcast. But yeah, I actually, relative to where I'm normally at, yeah, I did a whole podcast on it. JD McCarthy, where are my ranks at? You know my ranks. Dang it. They're nothing special, which is, I'm not trying to have special ranks, to be fair. But Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, and JJ McCarthy, followed by Spencer Rattler. Feels pretty solid to me. It should be fairly mundane and beige, and I'm fine with that. What's an amputees? Don't stop. I can't laugh at these wonderful, vaguely daddish jokes. Genji got it. Why am I the only person talking about Carson Stll? You're not. I mean, I did a whole thing. I listened to my pocket. No, you don't have to do that. I thought it was interesting. I don't know if he's the most interesting man in college football, which is apparently his nomenclature at this point. But I think he's rather interesting. I think he's one of the few young declares. I think he's relatively productive and dominant. He and that other guy, he ran into a second-year player who was looking to expand too in UCLA, TJ Harden. Both kind of split the role down the middle, which is not a death sentence heading into the NFL because that happens a lot. But they both had like 30% of the rushing attempts, 5% of the targets, and they mixed and matched the receiving yards versus the touchdowns. But I like seeing that 3 down, that skill set on both sides of the game, if you know what I mean, rushing and receiving. And I think he was fairly effective at it, but you didn't see that running back one, tier one running back one profile in any of his seasons. He's coming out a little early, which is a good thing, but I do wonder what happens if he had another year. I'll have to see what the NFL thinks. That's my rough profile of him. I kind of liked him, and that's what I say. I've got him 8th overall, but in a tier of 3 players.
I like, for me, he's bigger. He's 6'1", 215-ish. Excellent contact balance, good power. He's very good at continuing to drive his legs once he's made contact with a defender and finishing plays forward. He is best between the tackles where he can just be a bull. He's not necessarily a space guy. He's a better pass catcher than he looks like he should be, especially for his size, but he is, again, not one of these players that is going to, roll out a 40, 50 catch season. So a little bit of limited upside that way. He is so deliberate behind the line of scrimmage and through the line of scrimmage. And so the NFL moves fast. Like part of what works about play action is you can freeze the defense for half a second before they make a decision, and that half a second matters. Him being slow behind the line of scrimmage, NFL defenders are going to all be NFL defenders as opposed to the players that he has been playing against who are not all NFL defenders. All NFL defenders are all just insanely fast, insanely big, insanely strong. Being deliberate behind the line of scrimmage is not a great thing. I think he is slow in blitz pickup. Like, he is, like, if a defender comes straight on, he's fine. But if you get an edge rusher, and that's a new thing with the NFL where you have edge rushers. They're not defensive ends. They're not outside linebackers. They're not cornerbacks. They're edge rushers. And that's what they do, is get to the cornerback from the outside. He's not quick enough to pick that blitz up. He also invites too much contact, John Kelly, and gets hit squarely. So, like, he is running to contact. And the other piece that I don't like about him is he runs a little bit like Pac-Man, where like he's a straight line guy until the ghost comes, so he doesn't really have a plan, and then he's like, oh no, the ghosts, and he's trying to run away. And so like again, he's fine, he's a bigger back, but not necessarily the back that I want out of this class. I mean, he's fine. Like if you probably get him in the 3rd or 4th round of rookie drafts, and that's awesome. Maybe even the 5th, because this running back class is dog manure. But
tell you what, NFL, here's a deal. If you add the Pac-Man soundtrack to running back, that I will start watching. Just whack. I would watch such every time. You guys like Dylan Johnson and Frank Gore? I actually do like Frank Gore Jr. a little bit, especially considering he's remarkably underwhelming in terms of his overall team relative production. But yeah, I found some things to like in there, including a 7% target share, an 8% peak target share, 3 receptions per game. I don't hate it, especially in this lower receiving class for running backs. Southern Mississippi running back 1, but he was a lower part of the offense and very underwhelming NFL players who played for that team, which is a little bit concerning. But he's a runner more than a receiver, but with some receiving skill set. And what was I pointing out earlier about Frank Gore? There was something on his, I don't know. He's got 47% of rushing attempts in 2 seasons. Again, he's more of a full role running back than a lot of players in this class, but playing for like Southern Mississippi. I kind of like him a little bit. He's in the Carson Stll tier.
He's 5'7", 199 pounds. Like
I'm moving him up.
He is a very, very bowling
I love tiny guy
gentleman. Yeah. So like Gore does an effective job with pace. I don't think he's fast, but he can get chunk yards because he does a good job with change of speeds. He finishes runs really well, especially for a smaller back. Like he keeps those legs moving and gets low to the ground and pad level low and can actually push piles a little bit. And he also has really good patience and vision inside, which again, for a smaller back, it's a little bit Devin Singletary like, where he's not really an outside the tackles runner, not really a sweep runner, which you would expect because he's smaller, but he actually can run inside. He's got enough speed in the open field to get chunk yards. I think there are times when he puts his head down and continues to run even when the hole isn't there. So like sometimes that vision lacks and sometimes he's just stubborn and is like, I'm going to try to run through it, when the real answer is a hole opened up, 2 gaps to the side and he doesn't get there. I don't think he's a natural pass catcher. I think he's an adequate pass catcher. I don't think you're going to line him up out wide. Like there are players that you can split out wide. McCaffrey's one. Even James Cook will do that a little bit. Kamara, where you can be like, all right, we're going to motion you out into the slot and run you down the field or run you on a wheel route. I don't think he does that, but he's adequate. He'll catch screens and make plays in space. He is terrible at pass blocking. Terrible. And again, not that you necessarily need him to do that, because in passing situations, most of the time you want him to be catching passes, but that's an avenue to get on the field is you can pass block. So NFL coaches are like, yeah, you're a 3rd down back because you can pass protect. And then you end up getting checkdowns and receptions on 3rd down because because you can pass block. And he can't.
Why isn't everyone hyping Jalen Wright? I don't know. They shouldn't.
He is fast. That's why. He gets chunk runs. He is chunk runs, and everyone's looking for Devin Achane.
And
yeah.
And Tyrone Tracy Jr.
True. I mean,
Alex, for each of you and your process, has draft capital become more or less important over the years? I mean, it's always stayed central. I mean, for fantasy, why not take the signal that's offered? I would point out that a lot of that is, I think more of that is opportunity in the NFL liking its own farts and people are willing to admit. I mean, the fact that people hit from cursor conference with no draft capital, if nothing else, that says there's a lot of missed talent because the NFL literally has the choice. But we play fantasy, so what how much does that matter relatively? It's the single most important factor on any position. So simple. And it's not been less than that ever. So,
and for me, Alex, it's important for the players that I like to get draft capital. Players that I don't like, I don't care if you get draft capital. I don't care.
I was going to say this answers the second part. Like, wow, you have to, I think, admit that there is better and worse paths to opportunity. And there is a lot of evaluation that goes on. I'm borrowing all of that at multi-million-dollar signal as well. Don't get me wrong. But like I would still stayed in on Tyler Johnson for a minute. He was just too productive in college. Like I like him. It's that simple, as Zach is going to say. But I will reasonably lower my expectation that he's going to find that path to opportunity. But I want to stay as true to what I think the player is capable of in the range of outcomes that I spend all this wasted time trying to come to an opinion of. And so that's how I moderate that range of outcomes. It's not that it narrows or widens over time what's acceptable. There is no acceptable. I mean, there's better hit range categories for different positions. A quarterback is basically just the first 10 picks, by the way. Yeah. But you've also got Dak, you've got Tom Brady, and that's kind of the same story everywhere else. You're looking for those guys, but you got to respect the range where it's most likely.
It's like nine. It's
running
like
backs.
It's like 9%.
Really the top 4.
It's like 9% outside the top 15. It's literally like 9%, and that's over like 15 years. It's ridiculous.
It's kind of NFL likes the smell of its own thoughts. I'm telling you. Yeah. And then with wide receivers, it's really the first 3 rounds. Everything outside of that is gravy. But again, we do go looking for those guys, but you have to respect the most likely range. There's an interesting first round trend with wide receivers as well. That's kind of independent in those first, like later first seems to be worse than just first 3 rounds in some ways. I think you had an interesting point about day 1, day 2 picks in that way. Like the first pick on day 2 is they've come in specifically, spent all their time working on it overnight and said, this is a guy we're going to go and get. Whereas the late first rounds are kind of just the next guy on the board at the end of a long day. There might be something to that. But anyway, but that's just hyperbole more than anything else. So there are no acceptable ranges, but there is an acceptable, reasonable boundary where players are more likely to get better opportunity, plus all that evaluation that we have. I accept that goes into it. That's probably better than my own. So yeah, that's my draft capital thoughts. Additions, Zach? You just don't care.
I think you hit it. I think we're using so. It's really funny. There's a big argument about, draft capital is better than your process. Well, yeah, it is, but we can use draft capital in our process, and then our process is better than draft capital.
Not playing mini GM. I'm not, nor do I want to be a GM for a football. Like, stop pretending. We play fantasy for fun, so let's play that. GNG, I might roll around on the ground crying, laughing if McConkey goes fine. I don't know. Philip J. Fry. It's an awesome TV show. Would you
Sorry
take
about your dog.
MHJ? Yeah, right. That episode. God damn. He drops to 103. Would you take MHJ? I don't have a team. Oh, you mean in a rookie draft? Yes, I would take him higher than. I don't think that would be a drop in a Superflex draft, which is kind of, I assume you got probably 2 quarterbacks, MHJ. So
yeah. But he's saying it's non PPR, although that's kind of cool with Harrison because I think that he is a yards and touchdown guy more than he is a drive tons of targets guy, although he should see high volume. But I don't think like the way he operates doesn't necessarily lend itself to 140 catches.
Yeah.
He may do that, but I would be a lot more like I would be less surprised if he was like 110 10 catch guy, but like big yardage and like a ton of touchdowns because he just can do things in all of the areas of the field, including the red zone, that will be successful. So I don't mind doing that.
I think the answer to this comes after the draft. Sorry, Philip.
Yeah.
Because if there's a few interesting quarterbacks outside of those two, this is like significantly interesting. And if they get good draft capital, you take them. Outside of that, I can tell you, you're not taking a running back. I don't care that it's non-PPR. You might take Brock Bowers. Like that would be the other guy I might consider there to do something with a non-PPR league. But I mean, you can wait till the draft to decide. And if there's an interesting quarterback that you like that's reasonable to take in there, I would take the quarterback in a super flex non-PPR for sure. But you could even then you could consider Bowers if you really want to. I think that would be reasonable in that situation. Yeah.
But also that, Philip, is a place where you could trade that pick for a player, and like even if Marvin Harrison becomes Marvin Harrison that everybody expects, like if you can make that pick, you know, whatever, like Devontae Smith plus a pick next year, like, and that seems reasonable. Like if you could do something like that, that may be a way to go. Or, I mean, I like Kyle Pitts plus a first next year, like that sort of thing, or whatever it is that.
I just want to emphasize: don't take a running back. There's no running back that can get up into that. I don't care if they're taken first overall in the draft. You don't take them above the quarterbacks. You don't take them above the wide receiver this year. Don't get me wrong. There's a Freeman hiding in this class, maybe a couple, as far as I know. But like, we're not going to get it. Despite how good we are with running back ranks, not we, but consensus we, like there's just no one worth putting in that range, despite this league format, to be clear. That's my feeling on it. Marv. Yeah, I'd be very comfortable taking Marv there too. Exactly. You had him. Sky, wide receiver 12-ish, but a lot of respected guys had him. A lot of, and they deserve to be, like the people I disagree with this are still good at this. Like that's the thing with accepting reasonable ranges of outcomes. Like, I got kind of lucky, and maybe I got luckier than I can still prove or know. But there were reasonable concerns that I think are still worth keeping, that I still look for. And that helped me out with Sky Moore. It's the best I can say for you. It was 2022, right?
Yes. I had him 12th, but it was in a class where there were only like 5 receivers.
I can still say there were 4, 5. There were definitely 5 players that definitely should have been above Sky Moore, even being reasonable about it. There's no way, from my perspective, that Burks, even though he missed, Pickens, Wilson, Olave, or London should have been below Sky Moore. That was getting too high on landing spot, best guess. Like he should have been. I don't know who we're talking about, but I don't think he should have been below those, even pre-draft. I put David Bell above Drake London because screw Drake London, and it was pre-draft, and that was me just being. And it says it in my notes. If this man gets draft cap, there it is. I love David Bell, but I knew he probably shouldn't have been there long term. And anyone putting him there should have had a reasonable note about that too. Gerald Robinson. Wish I listened to you guys about him back then. I mean, again, it's easy to look back in hindsight. I don't trying to dissuade you from listening or joining in the conversation because we need more people to talk to us because we get very bored of each other. But again, just don't expect us to play the hits and expect that every year. We do pretty well, and we're going to try and be reasonable and hopefully go back and say why we thought we got something wrong when we do, and that's the best I can promise you. We'll be honest about it and accept the L's.
Someone on Twitter just went back and liked my my Justin Jefferson evaluation from 2020. I was like,
that's a solid one. I had pretty well that year, but I did have Jalen Reagor in that tier, and I don't regret it. At the time, it's the best I could do, but I think I found a way of getting around the Reagors of the world these days. I love Reagor at the time. Paul Sky Moore, king of targets per round run. Thank you. That's Kadarius Toney now. No, I think it's still Christian Watson. That's a guy I still get drawn into long debates on Twitter about targets per round run and Christian Watson, and no one will accept it.
He is the funniest evaluation that I've ever had, because he was like my wide receiver 9 in that class, in the 2022 class, and like I'm watching him and I'm like, I don't like this player, I don't, but the things he does well, he does so well that he is my wide receiver 9. It doesn't matter about all the other stuff that he does poorly, because he does so well. Like I've never watched a player get behind a defense as easily as Christian Watson. Like every play, he is open by like 8 yards deep. And so like, and that was my kind of the caveat with that. Like, I'm like, look, this is where he ranks. I don't know. It's with little conviction. Like, this is just kind of a hole in my process where, like, if a guy gets these grades, he is what he is, even if I don't like him.
Fade efficiency of all kinds. That's my lesson. But you need to put more respect on 5th round alphas. I guess I do. Yeah, I love lower drafted guys. It's just I hate certain players. No, not really. But 5th round alphas. My. Christian Watson, Senior Bowl hero. Yeah, he's another one of those. Zach, Jaheim Bell. I disagree. Loads of less. He can't be good. Got it.
Where I never said he was good. I said that the 1 2-minute stretch of one game was good in a tweet, and I also said that he looks like Charles Clay.
That's not saying he looks
like he currently is tight end 4 out of 4 tight ends that I've watched. But he does some things, I think, that yeah, like, well, and I've only watched 4 tight ends, so I can't but like, he does some really interesting things, but the NFL is going to look at him and go, I don't know what to do with him, because he's not a traditional tight end. He's not a split out tight end. He can play running back. He's kind of an H-back. He can be moved all around. He can carry the ball. He can get deep. He can block a little bit, but he's not a great pass blocker, so you don't want him in line. It's just a weird profile, but like super athletic and can make plays down the field. He can stretch the seam, but not. He's not I don't know what he is. He's
athletic Charles Clay. That's the only thing I'm taking away from that.
Charles Clay was athletic. Do you really, like, Charles Clay was a running back in college and was a better running back. Like Jaheim Bell was a running back for like 2 years in college, and Charles Clay was a better running back than Jaheim Bell. But when he got to the NFL, they were like, I don't know what you are. You're
what even are you, man?
Yeah, you're a full end. You're like a hybrid, fullback tight end. I don't know what you are.
You're a full end.
Yeah, maybe you're a tight back. I don't know.
We don't have a category.
No.
Get rid of him. Jaheim Bell, Johnny Wilson. Get ready to learn UPS. I guess.
Johnny Wilson.
Let's talk about tight ends. I haven't really got into tight ends yet. Sorry, I just know Brock.
So I like I said, I've watched 4. Obviously, Brock Bowers is just ridiculous. Like, if Kyle Pitts was actually good, he would be Brock Bowers. Like, that's the Brock Bowers profile. He's got the highest tight end grade that I've ever given out. Jatavian Sanders is pretty good. I like what he does. I think he's got ball security issues. It was really funny. He was not very fast in 2022, even though he had 54 catches and 613 yards, but he was like slow, not really a separator. And then his 2023 film, like, okay, this guy is good. He's athletic. He is a tight end that we want. He attacks zones well. He is ridiculous after the catch, and a big, like, he is the big tight end, the 6'4", 256 but with the ability after the catch. Like I said, Jaheim Bell's fine. Cade Stover out of Ohio State, I think, is really good. 6'4", 255. And yeah, he played at Ohio State. So like he is necessarily like third, fourth, fifth in the pecking order, but is still catching, 30, 40 balls and 4 or 5 touchdowns a year. And like, man, when he blocks you, you're going to be blocked for like 3 plays. Like he'll block you out, and then when you get around him, he'll turn around and he'll block you back past the play again. And then if you fall down trying to get away from him, he'll wait for you to get up and he'll block you again, which like I love that tenacity. And then he's also a receiver. So he can do an awful lot. He's really good at selling the chip block and then getting out in space. So like he'll go out and he'll like block and be like, oh no, I lost this blocking assignment, and the defender will go after the quarterback. He's like, just kidding, I'm out here in the flat wide open. Now I've got a 20-yard catch. So
I like Cade Stover pretty well. Actually,
yeah,
comes up fourth. I mean, I really haven't dug into this position,
but that's where I am. So it's Bowers, Sanders, Stover, Bell right now, and I've watched 4. So here I am. I probably won't watch many more. Yeah. Do a 12 pick first round.
No, I don't know. I could name 12 players in this current state. Wait, you guys have Keon Coleman? Oh, hey, yes, absolutely, full on. Yeah,
I think he's a nice human.
Oh, as a person, he made a player, sure.
He made a really nice catch against Syracuse. I think that that he and Zach Wilson would be perfect for each other, because Zach Wilson, he's got the catch radius to help Zach Wilson out.
He's tier 5, man. Overall, ranked him probably. I'm probably doing a Puka Nakua thing here. I just don't like this type of profile. 14th. That's going to be too low post draft, but it's not for me.
What, Coleman?
Yeah,
he's 14 for me too.
Get lost. Good, you get out of it. Didn't even know that one.
Pete, we gotta start rolling because it is midnight.
I gotta go. Zach Genji, the league winner.
Sleeping on Rome Odunze. No, I mean he's in the second tier.
4th. No, wait, I have him 5th. Okay, yeah, I'm sleeping a little bit.
I mean, I get it. Yeah, whatever. Like he's in the second tier. Good. What do you want?
What do you want from me?
If you don't have him in the second tier, you're too high on Rome Odunze.
Why do you think that's actually a positive from my perspective? As this PFF grade isn't so good, because PFF grades aren't so good. That's my too long didn't read. I mean, it's more complex than that, but I don't think they're good. They're more NFL focused. Might be an explanation.
Probably flip and fail.
Basically, a film grade.
I take offense to that.
That's probably.
But that's what all data is. Like you're getting the data from the game. We're watching the film from the game. It all comes from the game. Yeah,
we're all actually tape people. Yeah. JC Troller, hey, welcome back. On QB evaluation, you've come at a weird time, but on a QB evaluation being difficult, sitting with a 102 and 103 almost makes me want to just take MGH and net. I understand your feeling, but if they're drafted in the top 10, it can be a lot. And are actually pretty decent by your evaluation or most standard evaluations, or just ADP. You can feel pretty confident taking them. The value on them, and this is part of why you just take the quarterback in Superflex, is solid. Like Bryce Young right now still has pretty decent value if you can go get a decent trade. In most leagues, you can get a decent, not great, but decent trade done. And that's after a terrible rookie season. I mean, that's a downside. So there's a little cushion. That's why they're so good that early. And even a Jared Goff hit, infinitely more productive long-term in a dynasty league than even a great wide receiver hit like seriously, long-term quarterback is a play in a super flex. Like it's night and day value-wise. But Zach has thoughts on this. I'm pretty
Well,
sure.
so I don't know if we've got ADP that has the rookies in here or not. Probably not. But you could probably take Marvin Harrison Jr. at 2 and then turn around and offer a trade with the 103, and you could probably get Kyler Murray plus for the 103.
Kyler Murray's a good one. I was gonna say Justin Herbert. The hate on him's going all crazy right now too.
So like that,
just get out, go get a great quarterback without any questions. And
that's what I would do if I was looking for quarterback. If I wasn't looking for quarterback, I would probably try to trade the 103 back to 105. And if I could get back to 105, have the 105 move up and get a piece on top of that and still get Neighbors or Bowers, plus either a 25 first, and now all of a sudden you get a running back next year and you're looking brilliant because you still got Neighbors, you still got Marvin Harrison, now you got a running back and you're just the bull of the woods. Or
a lot of active NFL players you could insert it. Like there are a lot of wide receiver values and running back values right now. You can easily just get out if you don't want to deal with it. And I don't blame you. Rookie evaluation is the Wild West. It is where you can make or literally break your team. If you feel a little uncertain, it's okay to go. I'm gonna go get anyone that Zach just said, or you could even go a little wilder, go a little safer, go get a couple first and Michael Pittman. Michael Pittman's going on great value right now, and he's not got near the upside in Dynasty as Nabbers or MJH. Probably grab lots of stuff on top of him.
Yeah,
just get out.
So like last year at this time, or not at this time, in May, so right after the NFL draft, Anthony Richardson, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud were all top 20 picks in startup. Yeah. So like these quarterbacks going out, like they're going to have value. And so that pick, even if you take Marvin Harrison Jr. at second, so you get him, you want him. If you're not comfortable with quarterback evaluation, if you are, if you need a quarterback, again, trying to trade for Herbert, trying to trade for Kyler Murray with that 103, I think is a brilliant pivot. If you don't necessarily need a quarterback, then I'm trying to move back to that 105, and I'm trying to get a piece on top that's either a first next year or, like a decent player this year on top of the 105.
Yep. Not really, but someone might overpay for a QB.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on Nico Collins for the future? I like later breakouts. I really do, because they add value unexpectedly. I'm not overly optimistic on their continued breaking out, just because normally they don't have more than one, maybe 2 seasons in them. I think of Robert Woods. And where Tank Dell's sitting right there for me to continue confirmation biasing my way to hell. I prefer Tank Dell. But Nico Collins had a fantastic year. There's no denying it. If you've got him, I think where his value's at right now, probably just sit on him and hope to get more points. But I think he's more someone I would add to and try to tear up in my rookie draft, or try to go get a player at a higher tier, because I'm always concerned about those later breakouts, which he definitely is. He's well over the threshold and continuing to be fantasy productive, or at least maintaining that production, even with CJ Stroud, even with the great rookie year that he had. That's just roughly where I sit. Thumbs up.
No, I don't have very many Nico Collins thoughts. Sorry.
That's a hell of a tear down, Zach. I think CJ Stroud to Lawrence better carry a hell of a plus.
Yeah.
Because again, the elite tier at quarterback and tight end is just a different landscape than wide receiver. And the elite tier and running back is kind of in that category too, because the positional advantage you gain in all 3 of those is just something wide receiver doesn't really offer that much. And wide receivers tend to carry that dynasty. We have dynasty bias, and wide receivers tend to carry the value over them. Like Lawrence is great, top 12 prospect with potentially a top 5 season at some point, but he's never shown it. Whereas you can get that with Dak Prescott for cheaper. You can get actual top 5 upside with Kyler Murray and Herbert, who we just mentioned values falling. I don't want to go down to Lawrence with that really significant pluses from someone like CJ Stroud. Doing that year one is a really significant indicator to me in my process. Like I'm expecting he could be a guy who continues to be in the Hurts, Allen, Mahomes category. And it's already heavier than it's ever been. He's not quite in there yet, but like that's where I want to keep him because there's that potential. That's phenomenal. That's very rare. So to trade out of it, you need to go to someone with at least top 5 upside, not an Allen, Mahomes, Hurts level, but like, again, Kyler Murray, Justin Herbert easily can score, keep up with them, if not beat them, and keep in that value range with more good seasons. Trading down to a Burrow or a Lawrence, who are great. I mean, Burrow, both Lawrence. Good quarterbacks in the NFL to great quarterbacks in the NFL are very different than the type of thing you have potentially with CJ Stroud. And it's got to carry a lot of significant pluses to me. Like, that's not the player I'd target with it. I think you can go slightly up, Murray, Herbert, and still get significant pluses. And that's better. I don't think Lawrence has that in his range of outcomes at this point.
Zach, I think the reason we think Lawrence is a value is because of his rookie profile. Because everything he's done in the NFL has been exactly the same. It's been 17 points a game.
Pretty
like good. He's fine, but he's not like 17 points a game is not separating you out. That's Daniel Jones, it's Kirk Cousins, it's Jared Goff. Like that's not a difference making quarterback. And tearing down from Stroud, who is already producing more than that, already has more value than that.
And it's really significant to do it in the window, and especially really early in the breakout window. Yeah. Like that's what I'm emphasizing. But
so I like that's not a move I'm making unless the plus is huge.
How did I say it? I'm never going to be able to finish this article tonight. There's something like 8 to 11 players at quarterback position since 2000 who have had 3 top 12 seasons within their first 4 years. I think it's 11 players, and 8 of them are currently active in the NFL right now. Like, it's an entirely different era of quarterback. But here's the thing: one of them is Russell Wilson, really falling in value. Trading into a guy who you could have picked up in any era with a Eli Manning, frankly, is not where I want to be at in this exciting era of quarterback. Like, I just, like, why? There are so many options that we barely had any of, like the Peyton Mannings of the world. We actually have several. Well, not Peyton Manning, but in that category of, at least in that range of difference makers right now. Like, why settle when several of them are falling in value?
Yeah,
like go for Dak if you really want to go there. He at least has top 5 every now and again. He just had a good year, so maybe not.
Here down to Kyler,
but he's also older. I would rather, but if you want to go down significantly to Lawrence, like Dak for me is like, I prefer Dak over Lawrence because his points per game is better, and I don't care about that age so much at quarterback, and there's more value opportunities. So I'll go that way if you can't get Lawrence or Murray. I can't get Herbert or Murray. So.
Yeah.
Roman Wilson going to find his way to the round 1 rookies for similar reasons that we discussed with other players. He's a fast high ADOT player, as I understand it. I ended up not liking him too much. High ADOT, high slot. He's in that weird category, but compares poorly even to the successful players from my lens. But yeah, I could definitely see again that high ADOT player always have that potential upside for NFL team. They love throwing draft capital high ADOT. But yeah, I don't like him too much. Did we do Roman Wilson earlier, or is that me and you talking?
We talked about Roman Wilson because I asked you about him because he was a player that we watched this week for the Dynasty Dummies episode because somebody had him high. I'll come up with it. But somebody who is notable. Dane Brugler had him as his 45th rated player overall.
Sinnott at tight end again. I'm only just getting into tight ends. He looks okay. He's not getting top 3, top 4, top 5, but he's someone I'm going to rank. He's interesting enough, coming from the Big 12, Kansas State. It's all right. Night, guys. Thanks for joining in, man.
Appreciate
EJD, of all the rookie QBs, who is the most accurate passer? Do you trust numbers and grades? I don't so much on that particular topic, but it is an important question. Zach?
Find out in 4 weeks at the same bad time. I don't know. I haven't watched enough quarterbacks, EJD, to
that's what
tell you.
It's going to be what PFF says.
No, don't. We'll do the opposite.
Okay. We'll cover tight ends and quarterbacks next week, I guess.
I mean, it'll be further than that for me, Peter. It's going to be another 2-3 weeks for me
in a few weeks.
For me to
obviously, what I meant to say is in a number of weeks.
Yeah. But hey, we hit the end of it.
I think we did.
Look.
All right, AJD, we will get back to you.
We will, but I don't have the answer for you.
I'm tired.
Yeah. We appreciate you all, but I'm looking over there.
Thanks, everyone.